Yun-Chi's will is shattering, and the world piercer holds the truth he can't bear to hear. Meiyin bleeds a single drop of scarlet as she carries a promise that might destroy them all. Like and subscribe to witness the price of knowing everything. Tell me, Meiyin, the world piercer is in your hands, so you are the only one who knows everything. You must tell me. Yun-Chi was mustering his full willpower to control his emotions. On the day he was crowned the great emperor of the 4 divine regions, he even believed that there was nothing in the world that could crack his mind anymore. In reality, his control was already on the verge of being overwhelmed by the unending tidal wave of emotions. A bead of scarlet blood finally appeared on Meiyin's lip. She looked down and answered in a difficult and pained voice. If she was the one who did everything, there's no reason why she wouldn't tell you anything after you returned, so please. Big brother Yun-Chi, please don't force yourself to believe the fiction anymore. You're the one who's forcing me and yourself to believe in it. Despite having lost any ability to defend herself, Meiyin still stubbornly resisted admitting the truth for some reason. It made Yun-Chi even more frustrated as he growled out uncontrollably. Everything was a lie. Even the flimsy theories I thought up to support your lies were lies, so why are you denying it still? What are you hiding? Why won't you tell me even after we've come this far? Meiyin didn't give a reply. She simply shivered even harder, almost as if she was submerged in an icy, hellishly cold pond. Suddenly, Yun-Chi realized something and pulled his hands away from Meiyin's shoulders in a hurry. His eyes trembled at what he saw. He had lost control of his profound energy during the outburst. As a result, the fabric where he had grabbed her was shredded, and her snow-white skin was covered in finger-shaped bruise marks. For a time, Yun-Chi's hands were frozen in the air. Then light, profound energy seeped out from his fingers, enveloped Meiyin's shoulders, and slowly removed the bruise marks. Drip, drip, drip. Physically, the teardrops dripping on his knees were warm and soundless. But mentally, Yun-Chi felt like his heart was being gouged out with every drip. For the past few years, Meiyin had become a crybaby. He recalled the time Meiyin broke down suddenly and cried for a long time into his chest after he had informed her of Xia Qingyu's demise. She had told him that it was tears of joy and elation, but he should have realized sooner that such wouldn't sound so broken-hearted. During the 3 years they cultivated in the eternal heaven divine realm, he had occasionally woken from his meditation to find Meiyin staring at nothing in particular with tear streaks on her cheeks. She had smiled at him and explained again that she was crying out of sheer happiness. Days like those felt like a dream, considering how dire the circumstances had been back then. Even when they were enjoying moments that should be heartwarming and relaxing on the blue pole star, her eyes would occasionally tear up for seemingly no reason whatsoever. My Meiyin is forever 15 years old. It was a half-joke he had cracked countless times to Meiyin because she had become way too prone to crying for the past couple of years. It was only now that he realized that it wasn't without a reason after all. Perhaps every drop of tears she shed was a drop of sorrow and pain she had failed to lock inside her heart. I'm sorry, Meiyin. He placed his hands on her shoulders again, but this time his movements were gentle, and his voice much softer than before. That was a most ugly outburst from me. I thought I had grown strong enough to face anything, but it looks like I was fooling myself again. But the truth of this matter is just too important for me to let go of. Can you please tell me? However, her head remained bowed, and her tears kept dripping like they were never-ending. Had her eyes been visible, Yun-Chi would have realized that they were fully dyed by grayish despair. For the owner of the divine stainless soul, it was almost unthinkable. I can't, she kept muttering seemingly more to herself than Yun-Chi. Her voice had lost its melodious quality and become wooden out of sheer pain. I promised her it was her final wish, so I cannot promise, final wish. Meiyin, listen to me. Look me in the eye and listen to me. Yun-Chi very gently cupped her tear-stained cheeks and lifted her head. I know you've made some sort of promise with her. You probably promised that you will keep all of her secrets until the end, and the fact is you've done very well until now. You haven't leaked even a single word throughout these years. Lying to someone close to you is a painful thing, and you had to make up lie after lie in order to keep your promise with her. You've already done the absolute best anyone could possibly hope to do. It was a combination of pure luck and my existing suspicions that unearthed these truths. You've never tried to reveal them of your own accord, and you did everything in your power to keep them under wraps until the end. If you confess everything now, it is simply because it is the inevitable outcome after I found out. You are in no way breaking your promise to her or letting her down." Xianxi's words unsettled the dark despair in Meiyin's eyes a little. There was not a flicker of blame in his eyes despite all of the lies she said to him, only deep love and pain for everything she had gone through. His voice grew even softer and he said, "Not only are you shouldering all of the secrets and truths on your own, you knew everything she did but could only watch the world slight, shame, belittle, and ridicule her. You were even forced to watch me hate and resent her so much that I refused to even hear her name from anyone's mouth. It must have been painful, wasn't it?" His words drove into the innermost depths of her soul with the strength of a hammer. The shivering in her pupils and across her body abruptly grew many times more intense than before. "Have you forgotten?" Xianxi's lips curled into a very soft, very gentle smile. "We are longer who we were back then. We are now husband and wife, and as husband and wife, we are supposed to shoulder the happy things, the sad things, the heavy things, and even the sinful things together, right? So, please, tell me the truth. Would you rather keep your silence, watch me continue on with my life like a soulless zombie, and leave her name blackened by the world despite everything she has done for it behind the scenes? Or would you rather confess everything to me?" The darkness in her eyes shook harder and harder until finally, "Ooh, SS." At some point, the darkness in her eyes finally shattered into countless tears that looked like beautiful yet sorrowful crystals. Ooh, you are." Her heart, emotion, and her tears reached their breaking point all at the same time. She clung to Xianxi and cried her heart out. For the past few years, every smile she made was accompanied by a prick to the soul. Every time it happened, it would hurt her heart so bad that it took her forever just to recover her breath. It was her. It was Sister Qingyu. It was her world piercer. It was her. Ooh, she finally cried out that name. She finally didn't need to shoulder everything on her own any longer. She cried as if the 10,000 mountains she had held inside her heart had toppled all at once. She screamed as if she was trying to vent all the pain, suffocation, and torture she had endured for the past couple of years. It would be a long time before she was able to form even one coherent word. Xianxi hugged her, closed his own eyes, and gritted his teeth tightly. He already knew it was true before Meiyin said it, but to hear it from Meiyin herself still shattered his world like never before. Somewhere in the sky, Meiyi's breathing was unusually out of control. If Xianxi himself wasn't 100 times more disarrayed than she currently was, he would have noticed her existence already. Although she had promised to leave him alone, her worry ultimately triumphed over the resolution. Not in a million years was she expecting to hear such a shocking truth. If Xianxi was the most wounded and disbelieving when Xia Qingyu had dealt him the greatest betrayal of his life, she and Kai Weiao would be the second. Kai Weiao in particular still couldn't let go even though it had been many years since Xia Qingyu had passed away. "Devil Queen," she murmured to herself, "your assessment of her character wasn't your biggest mistake in life after all. Do you remember that time where the world somehow learned that it was the glazed light realm who had concealed you for a day? Not long after that, Sister Qingyu showed up to personally cripple my father's profound veins and imprison me in the moon god realm." After Meiyin finally calmed down, she began telling her story. Her eyes were completely red at this point, and there were still bits of tears clinging to her eyelashes. "Father, Sister and I had known that it was only a matter of time before people found out about it, and we had all resolved ourselves to our inevitable fate. However, the leak still happened sooner than we expected. It was because Sister Qingyu was the one who had leaked it on purpose." "I thought so." Now that he knew the most crucial truth, many things started to take on a whole new outlook in his mind. If the other king realms, especially the Brahma monarch realm, had discovered this first, the consequences might have been much more severe and unpredictable. So she eliminated this possibility by exposing the truth herself and leaking it to the eternal heaven realm first. After Zhou Zuzi had traveled to the glazed light realm, she severely injured father, crippled his profound veins, and announced that she would imprison me in the moon god realm for 1,000 years right to his face. Shui Qianheng was the realm king of one of the 3 strongest upper star realms in the eastern divine region. It was one thing to injure him severely, and another to cripple his profound veins permanently. The latter was among the cruelest of punishments that could happen to a profound practitioner. Moreover, Shui Qianheng was the central pillar of his star realm at the time. To cripple him was to deal a terrible blow not just to the glazed light realm, but the eastern divine region itself. It was such a harsh punishment that even Zhou Zuzi had tried to beg for clemency on behalf of the glazed light realm. Everyone in the Eastern Divine region knew that Zhou Xuzi adored Meiyin and had tried really hard to recruit her to be his disciple a long time ago. However, he couldn't request Meiyin to be imprisoned in the eternal heaven god realm instead, because the world would only think that he was protecting her. So begging for clemency was all he could do. Even so, Xia Qingyu stayed her course and dealt out the punishment that could only be described as cruel and bone-chilling. That was the point. If the punishment was light, the Brahma monarch realm would be able to call her out and attempt to wrestle the right to punish the glazed light realm away from her. As it was, no one could even attempt to intervene in the matter. At the same time, anyone who wished to exploit Meiyin's divine stainless soul while the glazed light realm was down would have to face the moon god emperor first. On the surface, it looked like a harsh punishment. In reality, it protected both me and the glazed light realm. Meiyin sniffled. She told me that big brother Yunqi would surely be able to heal father's profound veins after you came back. And she was right. Her tears started falling against her will again as she looked up. Father is completely healed, and I only wish that I could have told her about the news in person. Yunqi asked quietly. She told you everything after she took you to the moon god realm, right? Amen. Meiyin nodded. She purposely spread the news of the harsh punishment not just to protect the glazed light realm, but also to keep anyone from claiming ignorance and trying something while she was taking me to the moon god realm. After that, at the bottommost moon prison of the moon god realm, she showed me the world piercer and told me everything. Yunqi's breath caught in his throat. Most of the things you guessed are correct except for a couple details here and there, big brother Yunqi. For starters, Sister Qingyu did engrave the recordings in the 4 illusory glazed light jades, but she was using the hidden moon floating image pearls when she performed the act. Yunqi wasn't surprised by this at all. They're similar to the illusory glazed light jades in that they can record something without being detected. Right. The recordings were transferred to the illusory glazed light jades later on to create the illusion that Meiyin was the one who engraved them. In terms of the ability to avoid detection, the hidden moon floating image pearl is actually inferior to the glazed light realm's illusory glazed light jade. However, she was the moon god emperor, and the aura leaking out of the hidden moon floating image pearl when it was recording could be subsumed perfectly by her own moon god aura. For her at least, the hidden moon floating image pearl was definitely more undetectable than the illusory glazed light jade. Also, she engraved 5 recordings in total instead of 4. 5, it's the day the heaven-smiting devil emperor left the primal chaos, right? Yunqi leaned forward with an obvious note of urgency in his voice. Amen, Meiyin nodded. However, I wasn't present on the day the heaven-smiting devil emperor left, so the recording was unusable. Do you have it with you? Yunqi's voice grew even more urgent. The recording was of course useless to them now, but it might have been preserved for some other purposes. The recording was made by Xia Qingyu, so of course she wouldn't appear in the scenes. Her voice, though, that should definitely be in the recording. Even her voice would be better than nothing. However, Meiyin shook her head lightly before replying, Sister Qingyu destroyed it. Yunqi's eyes immediately became filled with disappointment. All of the recordings that were copied into the illusory glazed light jades were processed by Sister Qingyu herself. She made sure to wipe out every scene with me in it, her own voice, and anything else that may expose the deception. Then, she destroyed all 5 hidden moon floating image pearls. She didn't want to leave even the tiniest trace behind. This meant that Xia Qingyu had decided as soon as that point in time to transfer all of her achievements to Meiyin. Yunqi desperately needed to know why she was even doing all this, but he forced himself to calm down and let Meiyin continue at her own pace. He didn't want to miss even a single word. I knew how useful these recordings would be for big brother Yunqi. If they were revealed to the public at a suitable time, they would help you tremendously, be it in terms of reason, standpoint, or morale. I immediately asked her why she made all these preparations, or went so far as to use the precious hidden moon floating image pearls to record these moments. I asked her if she noticed some signs that hinted at the tragedy long before it happened. Back then, the explanation Meiyin gave him was that her divine stainless soul had warned her about some sort of future danger. That was why she had recorded those moments. The real reason, or rather Qingyu's reason, was, she told me it was because the you at the time worried her too much. A shiver rippled across Yunqi's eyes. She had expected you to return to your usual sharpness after dying in the star god realm and being reborn. But not only was that not the case, You became softer than ever before. Bad enough that your killing intent didn't grow, your edge actually even became duller after the experience. Xianxia. Later on, she found out that you weren't just reborn on the blue pole star, but you also found Sister Yuechen and the daughter you'd lost for more than a decade. When you had lost all of your profound energy and returned to being a cripple, it was your daughter, Wuxin, who sacrificed her own heretic god talent to revive it. As a result, you became pious toward the heavens, grateful toward fate, hopeful toward the future, and filled with the desire to accompany your daughter and make up for lost time. However, it came at the cost of the one thing you needed the most, your ambition. As the successor of the heretic god and the owner of many precious treasures, complacency is the worst state you can be in. There were many times Xianxia's lips had parted as if he wanted to say something. However, he forced them shut because he didn't want to interrupt Meiyin. In fact, Xia Qingyu had directly or indirectly mentioned this to him many, many times in the past. "Did your heart become soft because of your daughter?" she had once said with a hidden sigh in her voice. Meiyin continued. "Not long after that, the heaven-smiting devil emperor broke into the primal chaos, but you were able to quell her fury and gain a patron like nothing the universe has ever seen. All of the realm kings and god emperors thanked you for your deeds and worshipped you as the god-child messiah. Not only that, you found Jasmine again with the power of the evil infant's wheel of myriad tribulations inside of her. It both filled another hole in your life and net you another powerful patron. However, Sister Qingyu said that these were all meaningless because they are ultimately not your own strength. Worse still, their presence completely removed the last vestiges of ambition and sense of crisis inside of you." Xianxia remembered this clearly as well. At the time, all he thought about was the peaceful life he was going to lead after he returned to the blue pole star with Jasmine. He had thought that his achievements as the god-child messiah and the promise made to him by the eternal heaven god emperor himself were enough to secure his safety. It wasn't completely a false misconception. Everyone already knew that he was the heretic god's successor and the owner of the sky-poisoned pearl. After the Crimson Calamity, the god emperors and realm kings had also treated him with the greatest reverence. In terms of status at least, he was elevated to their equal or higher. He was the one and only bearer of a creation god's inheritance. It didn't take a brain to know that it was only a matter of time before he surpassed absolutely everyone in the primal chaos. And therein lay the greatest problem. He wasn't the great emperor of the primal chaos yet at the time. He was just a divine king. Take himself, for example. If one day he came to know of a greenhorn who would surpass him in reputation the moment their achievements were announced to the world, and would also surpass him in power if given the time to grow, even he would do everything in his power to remove them. He had been oh so proud, satisfied, content, at peace with his current self, and full of yearning for a bright future at the time. And what a childish, amusing, and fragile mindset it was. You may have had Sister Jasmine to protect you after the heaven-smiting devil emperor was gone, but a god emperor's ambition can never be predicted, and she had already noticed that Long Bai intended to kill you at the time. Even if that wasn't the case, what if something happened to Sister Jasmine herself? Who could protect you or her if, say, she suddenly lost control of the evil infant one day? If your power proved insufficient on the day it was needed, then Big Brother Xianxia wouldn't be the only one who'd suffer. The entire blue pole star would suffer as well. Meiyin then stared into Xianxia's eyes and repeated exactly what Xia Qingyu had said to her back then. He was believing in and yearning for the beautiful future with everything he had. Therefore, I must plan and prepare for the worst-case scenario as well. Xianxia gritted his teeth unconsciously. His fingers were clenched almost tight enough to crush his own knees. The true devils have never been the devil race which lives within the darkness. Instead, they exist within the depths of every living being's soul. Therefore, do not be so naive as to expect your kindness to be repaid in turn, and never ever underestimate the depths that people can stoop to. Meiyin paused for a brief moment before continuing. Big Brother Xianxia, I told you that it was the heaven-smiting devil emperor who said this to me, but it was really Sister Qingyu. Continue. His teeth were still clenching completely against his will. He had to take a moment to adjust his breathing before he finally squeezed out the word. After Sister Qingyu obtained the world piercer from the heaven-smiting devil emperor and gained full control over it, she began looking for a planet that could act as the blue pole star's substitute. At the time, neither the heaven-smiting devil emperor nor Sister Jasmine had left yet. That was obvious. It had to have taken Xia Qingyu an incredible amount of time to find an inhabited planet that was nearly identical to the blue pole star, both in terms of aura and appearance. At the time, he was looking forward to a peaceful future, having no idea that someone was wordlessly doing everything in her power to fill up the abyss that was right beneath his feet. Yes, the chance of the ground he was standing on collapsing was very small, but she did it anyway because, deeper than even the abyss, was her love for him. At this point, his fingers had become completely bloodless, and after all that she had done for me, I killed her. I killed her. When did the heaven-smiting devil emperor give Qingyu the world piercer? Xianxia asked in the calmest voice he could manage while withholding a pain that felt like it was about to drill out of his chest. Meiyin answered without hesitation. Sister Qingyu said that it was the day you implanted the slave imprint in Sister Xianxia. Xianxia exclaimed in shock. That day? There was no one Xia Qingyu hated more than Xianxia. Even before she fell into the abyss of nothingness, she had tried everything in her power to kill Xianxia. That year, she had driven Xianxia into a corner and forced Xianxia to submit to her. But despite hating the woman to the bone and wanting to kill her with her own hands, she had forced her to become Xianxia's slave instead. Today, Xianxia understood that it wasn't just because she wanted to humiliate Xianxia. It was another one of her measures to protect him, even though she wanted so bad to kill her with her own hands. Not long after you planted the slave imprint in Sister Xianxia and left the moon god realm, the heaven-smiting devil emperor herself sought out Sister Qingyu and gave her both the world piercer and the world-defying heaven manual. Why did she do that? Xianxia asked. Was it simply because Qingyu could control the world piercer? In terms of the ability to pilot the world piercer alone, Meiyin's divine stainless soul was actually much better than Xia Qingyu's heart of snow-glazed glass. Also, why did she give Xia Qingyu the world-defying heaven manual when she could have just given it to him directly? However, Meiyin shook her head and said, Sister Qingyu didn't tell me why. She said that it was a secret that mustn't be spoken, and that the contents would eternally remain between herself and the heaven-smiting devil emperor. Xianxia, the heaven-smiting devil emperor had left the primal chaos, and Xia Qingyu had fallen into the abyss of nothingness, so this was one thing he would never know. Despite everything she had prepared, Sister Qingyu wanted nothing more than to be proven wrong. She wanted it to be proven that she was just being overly worried and pessimistic. However, Sister Jasmine was attacked from behind the moment the heaven-smiting devil emperor left the primal chaos, and the worst-case scenario she imagined happened faster than she could possibly react to. Even worse, your dark, profound energy was exposed as well. At the time, almost everyone was standing against you. Sister Qingyu could have escaped with you using the world piercer, but she would reveal the fact that she owned a heavenly profound treasure. The entire moon god realm would go down with her, and you too would be hunted until the end of time. So, Sister Qingyu did the best thing she could think of at the time. She joined your enemies, pretended to sever ties with you on account of you being a devil person, and attempted to kill you in the most ruthless manner imaginable. Hidden behind the purple pylon divine sword's powerful light was none other than the world piercer itself. She was planning to teleport you away seamlessly right before her power could kill you, and create the illusion that you were utterly annihilated. This way, the world piercer wouldn't be exposed, the moon god realm wouldn't be implicated, and Big Brother Xianxia will be saved and free to grow as long as you liked, because everyone would have thought that you were already dead. Naturally, you would find out her intentions immediately after you were teleported to safety, and Sister Qingyu could find you just as quickly since she was the one who teleported you using the world piercer. That should have happened if Sister Xianxia hadn't interrupted at the last possible moment. Sister Qingyu searched for you for a very long time after you were sent away by Sister Xianxia. After all, the Void Illusion Stone's teleportation is completely random. She was terrified that you would fall into the hands of your enemies. After 8 to 10 hours of fruitless searching, she finally gave up temporarily and teleported to the blue pole star using the world piercer. She first teleported the blue pole star from the east of Eastern Divine Region to the south of the Southern Divine Region, then teleported the sky water star from the southern of the Southern Divine Region to where the blue pole star used to be. 1. The miraculous, planetary-scale teleportation nearly exhausted all of Sister Qingyu's strength, making it impossible for her to keep searching for you. Left with no choice, she teleported back to the moon god realm to recuperate. However, she didn't get to rest long before the eternal heaven god emperor announced the existence of the blue pole star. Meiyin sniffled again before adding, "You know what happened after that, big brother Xianxia?" Xianxia exhaled lightly. Yes, he knew everything that had happened afterward because he had experienced it personally, and yet he also knew nothing at all. Meiyin continued, "That fateful day seemed like it had happened naturally, but much of Sister Kingyu's plans were hidden among them. She knew that you would rush to the blue pole star as soon as you heard that it was surrounded. She knew you would make it there in the shortest amount of time possible, even though you knew you wouldn't survive what awaited you. You were also carrying the vanishing moon's celestial palace she had given you back then. Again, she knew for certain that you would use it. Therefore, Sister Kingyu took the fastest moon god of moon god realm, the golden moon god Yue Wuji, with her and rushed over. Then, she used her unique status to persuade the god emperors to surrender control of you to whoever captures you first. As expected, you soon appeared on the vanishing moon's celestial palace. Since Sister Kingyu is the moon god emperor, she easily wrestled control of the structure from you. While you were incapacitated, Yue Wuji captured you faster than anyone else, just as Sister Kingyu planned. After that, she destroyed the blue pole star in front of you. That wasn't true. What she destroyed was Yunqi's weakness, soft-heartedness, attachments, naivety, goodness, hesitation, and longing. She had saved the entire blue pole star without letting anyone know about it. After that, she attempted to execute you just like the first time, Meiyin said quietly. She wanted the entire world to think you were dead when you were really teleported somewhere else. In fact, she's decided to teleport you straight to the distant northern divine region this time. You would know that she really saved you after you appeared at the northern divine region safe and sound, but that wouldn't nearly be enough to dispel your hatred toward her for having destroyed your home planet. With only vengeance left inside of you, she was certain that you would evolve and grow at the fastest speed possible. Everything went exactly as Sister Kingyu hoped, and yet once again, she was. Xianxia had finally broken her concealment and stabbed Xia Kingyu right before the deed could be done. He ultimately escaped, but Xianxia perished as a result. Was it fate? Xia Kingyu had murmured with a sigh when she lowered the purple pylon divine sword powerlessly, and the hot remnants of the blue pole star illuminated her features. After that, Sister Kingyu did many, many things in secret while awaiting the day you returned to the god realm. Also, Meiyin, Yunqi finally broke his long-standing silence because he could no longer suppress the burning urge to ask that question. Before that, tell me why she wasn't willing to tell me everything after she returned. Why did she choose to push everything on you? He stared at Meiyin's eyes with intense desire. However, Meiyin did the unthinkable and shook her head. As if to confirm that he wasn't hallucinating, she mumbled in a powerless voice, "I don't know." "You don't know?" Yunqi's pupils dilated and his voice grew impatient once more. "What do you mean you don't know? You said she told you everything." Meiyin simply shook her head again. She and Xia Kingyu saw each other quite frequently during her time inside the moon prison. She knew the whole truth much earlier than Yunqi, which was why the damned question that would never be answered had tormented her for just as long. At the bottom level of the moon prison of the moon god realm, Xia Kingyu placed the world piercer in her hands so that she could nurture its slumbering spirit with her divine, stainless soul. "I know I'm being terribly selfish. I know I'm asking something terribly cruel of you, but you are literally the only person in the entire world whom I can ask this of. I don't understand. I don't understand at all." She shook her head in confusion. "If you're so certain that he will return and become the true king of the primal chaos, why don't you just tell him everything directly when you see him? I don't get why you want me to tell him that everything was my doing at all. I really don't. It's because I want him to hate me as deeply as the time I destroyed the blue pole star in front of him," Xia Kingyu answered calmly. Her eyes looked as calm as a pair of moons. "Only by hating me will he remember me as the vile, ruthless woman who destroyed his home planet instead of his wife. Only then will I not become the eternal regret that will haunt him forever after I die." "Die?" She shook her head again. "You are the moon god emperor. You are both incredibly smart and powerful. How can you die? Who can even kill you? I don't understand what you're saying at all." "I cannot make you understand," Xia Kingyu said quietly. "All I can tell is that there are many things in this world that can never be defied. When he ascends to the peak, death will be my best choice and ending." She shook her head again. How could she not when she still didn't understand a single word of what she was hearing? "You love him so much, Meiyin. You don't want him to spend the rest of his life regretting my passing, do you? I will die as an evil person, and he will obtain his vengeance and all the things he thought he lost. There is no better ending than this. We are husband and wife, and I dare say that I have fulfilled my wifely responsibilities to the best of my abilities. I have wronged you, but I'm sorry to say that I won't be able to repay your favor in this life. Perhaps in the next life. The next life. Xianxia's voice suddenly paused, and she kept repeating these three words with unfocused, sorrowful eyes. After that, a soul connection slowly appeared between Meiyin's divine stainless soul and the world piercer. She could immediately become the world piercer's new master once Xianxia had separated herself from it. However, she never found out why Xianxia had made that choice even after Xianxia had returned to the eastern divine region, and she had escaped from the moon god realm with the world piercer. All she could do was to bear everything and fulfill her final wish, and she did until... She said she would rather you hate her so that you won't become saddened by her death. She hoped that you would forget about her in time and treat her as naught but a distant memory. But why did she choose to die? Why? Xianxia roared with bloodshot eyes. It was a question not even Meiyin could answer, and his heart felt like it would explode at any moment. She only needed to explain a few words to convince me of everything. Why did she have to choose to die? I've asked her the same question many, many times, and I've tried to change her mind just as frequently, but... Meiyin sobbed. She always answered that she couldn't give me an answer. She said that death was the ending she must choose, and that it is her final rebellion against fate after having submitted to it. Xianxia was startled. Rebellion against fate, after having submitted to it. Sister Qingyu didn't explain to me what it meant. Also, she often muttered many strange things when she was lost in her own mind, Meiyin whispered. I remember her saying that she was an unforgivable sinner, that she had brought death to her younger brother, her father, and her mother. Xianxia abruptly looked up and retorted in a hoarse voice. Yuanba has been doing fine since I saved him from that one near-death tribulation. Not only did he become the master of the sanctuary, he is embarking on an adventure across the god realm right now. What did she mean she brought death to her younger brother? Her father is safe and sound at the Black Moon Merchant Guild as well. He may be lonely, but no danger has befallen him whatsoever. As for her mother, Xianxia was the one who doomed her, so what the hell is she even talking about? I don't know. Meiyin shook her head and repeated the three words she had repeated too many times throughout this conversation already. She also said that her death was enough to keep the moon god realm safe. However, Xianxia's eyes lost color and his entire body shook like a leaf. The moon god realm was the first and only star realm he had utterly annihilated. No other star realm had even come close to being subjected to the same level of ruthlessness. He had hated Xianxia so much that the moment he saw her flying out to meet him, he detonated all of the devil crystals of eternal darkness he had obtained from the bone sea of eternal darkness and turned the moon god realm to cosmic dust. Oh, he had been so delighted at the time. Even more delightful was watching the final rays of purple light in her eyes extinguishing into perfectly blank holes with the crumbling moon god realm as the backdrop. He even heard her muttering soullessly to herself, "Is fate really that inexorable? What have I done?" His chest felt like it was being sat on by innumerable mountains or gouged out by countless icy blades. His hands had clutched onto his skull before he realized it, and they were threatening to break under the sheer amount of force they were put under. He had been doing his utmost to control himself and stay calm, but Meiyin's final words had obliterated that effort completely. The crumbling light in his pupils and his suddenly collapsing aura frightened Meiyin terribly. She hurriedly hugged Xianxia and said in a panic, "Big brother Xianxia, don't scare me. It's not your fault, it's really not your fault. For Sister Qingyu's final wish, you cannot allow yourself to fall apart." Xianxia stretched out a trembling arm and pushed Meiyin slowly but stiffly away from him. Then he rose to his feet and stared blankly forward. "Please, leave me alone for a bit." After tossing out a line that sounded so off that it would worry even a complete stranger, Xianxia woodenly walked away from her. "Big brother Xianxia." Meiyin hurriedly rose to her feet and tried to follow him, but a hand caught her shoulder and stopped her. Meiyin turned around to see who it was before sobbing out, "Sister Xianxia, give him the time he needs." Xianxia shook her head while watching Xianxia stepping further and further away from them. Where would he go? Meiyin said tearfully. "Don't worry too much, he will come through. After all, he's no longer the..." Her voice faded into silence before she could finish her sentence. In the end, Xianxia lowered her gaze and whispered, "I will follow him from afar. While I do so, please inform the Devil Queen about this. She'll come up with something." "Amen," Meiyin responded as Xianxia's back gradually vanished from their sight. "I can spy on a person's soul, but I have never been able to see through Sister Qingyu's. I can nurture a person's soul, but again the one person I cannot help is Big Brother Xianxia. It's all my fault if only I did better." "It's not your fault." Xianxia shook her head. "It is impossible to do any one thing to absolute perfection in this world. The coincidence with Wuxin's eternal imagery stone was more like a twist of fate than it was an accident." She understood Meiyin's feelings better than she might think. It was because she too hid a secret she could never speak to Xianxia about, the daughter he had lost forever before he even met her. As Xianxia's chaotic aura moved further and further away from them, Xianxia concealed her presence and started to follow him. However, she paused in her tracks almost immediately before turning around to ask, "Meiyin, do you happen to know where the moon gods and divine envoys of moon god realm have vanished to?" Surprise flickered across Meiyin's features for a moment before she nodded slowly. Sister Qingyu used the world piercer to create a special space at a faraway lower realm. It was the last resort in case her death wasn't enough to save the moon god realm. At the very least, the core lifeline of the moon god realm would be saved. "I thought so." Xianxia sighed quietly. For the past few years, Kai Waiao had mobilized the forces of the divine regions to seek out the concealed moon gods and moon god divine envoys to no avail. It was yet another thing that remained an unsolved knot in the Devil Queen's heart. Now she knew the truth. There was one other thing that Xianxia noticed. Xia Qingyu wasn't born in the moon god realm, and she wasn't even its moon god emperor for more than a decade. However, she seemed unusually attached and even obsessed with it for some reason. The universe was a place that contained vast star regions and countless stars. However, their light failed to reflect even a bit of light in his eyes. His body was dragged along by the chaotic streams of space to God knows where. He had no idea where he had even drifted to. Once upon a time, he believed that Xia Qingyu was the one who destroyed the blue pole star. However, he was the one who really sowed the seeds of its destruction, while Xia Qingyu was its true silent protector. She was the one who forced him to evolve and walk the path he should have walked from the beginning. She even saved him, his homeworld, his family, his soul, his everything. Without her toiling away silently behind his back, he still would have lost everything even if he somehow survived the death trap. He would still be stuck in the cold and desolate northern divine region right now, lost, lonely, and barely surviving. But why? Why did you choose to leave without telling anyone? I have become the man you wished for me to become. I am standing at the height you dreamed of me standing right now. So why aren't you here to witness it? You couldn't tell me the truth back then because the best way to spur on me to grow was to sever my attachments and hesitations completely. But why did you choose what you did after that? What on earth were you bearing on your shoulders? Why wouldn't you let me carry it and face it with you, no matter how hopeless it might be? You paved the road for me and guided me to the best life I could ask for, but why did you give yourself such a bleak ending? The Yun clan's Xianxia has a wife from the Xia clan, Qingyu. She is unfilial to her parents-in-law. She is enemies with her clansmen. She murdered her own father and brother. She is heartless and devoid of righteousness. She is as venomous as a scorpion and a snake. Even if I were to use 10,000 words, it would still be hard to list down all of her crimes. I've decided to divorce you, and we will sever every relation we have with each other from now on. From today onward, we owe each other nothing but hatred, a hatred that will carry on for all eternity. Ha, 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 Xianxia laughed, but it was more sorrowful than tears. Scarlet beads of blood slid down his twitching lips again and again. She had saved his whole life, but he had left her with only the most hateful of gazes, the vilest of curses, and the destruction of everything she treasured. Even more soul-rending was the fact that she was gone forever, so there wasn't even a sliver of a chance for him to make it up to her or atone for his sins. Before he knew it, he had arrived at an unusually silent space. It was the emptiest star region in the vast eastern divine region by far. Just a couple of months ago, he had explained to Yun Wuxin in the calmest, most indifferent tone he could muster that it was the location of the former moon god realm. At the time, not a speck of the former star realm could be found already. That's right. No matter where he looked, not a trace of the moon god realm could be found anymore. Xianxia stretched out a trembling hand toward the void in front of him. Once upon a time, here lay the star realm she had commanded, the space she had lingered in for a long time. His fingers gradually lost strength, but he couldn't touch even a speck of her presence any longer. His mind and body drifted once more. When he came back to himself after an indefinite amount of time later, he discovered that he was standing at yet another empty star region. It was where he, Xianxia and Xianxia had battled each other to the death. All the planets and stars in the surrounding star regions had been destroyed as a result. With my current power, I can only maintain this divine domain for 100 breaths. Back then, Xianxia had ignited her vitality to create the incredibly powerful purple pylon divine domain immediately after the battle began. She had even managed to put him and Xianxia at a disadvantage for a time. Later on, she had spent nearly all of her power trying to kill Xianxia. She had sentenced herself to death right from the get-go. Everything she did during the battle was just to kill Xianxia. Xianxia is now your slave. You can order her around, make use of her, vent your anger on her, humiliate her, and ravish her as you please. You can do whatever you want to her. But there is something that you must remember. She is still someone that I must kill. Making her your slave with this scheme of mine does not mean that I don't wish to kill her. Rather, it only means that I can't kill her right now. Whatever happens between the two of you is none of my business. But you definitely must not develop any feelings for her. Even more than that, you definitely must not have any children with her. Understand? 1,000 years from now, Xianxia must die by my hands. On that day, after having driven Xianxia into the Purple Moon prison, Xianxia had thrust the purple pylon divine sword toward the middle of her back. It was a blow that could have severely injured or even killed Xianxia outright. However, he had blocked the attack with his own body and earned a bloody hole in the waist for his effort. Then his counterattack had severely wounded Xianxia and scattered her blood across the entire space. She looked like she couldn't feel any pain even though her sword arm was marred by his attack, and the light of the crumbling moon god realm was illuminating her deathly pale complexion. She had asked in a voice so fleeting it was almost transient, "Xianxia, do you still remember the vow you made to me back then?" The moon god realm she wished to protect the most. The Xianxia she wished to kill the most. Every corner of his soul felt like they were being torn to shreds and consumed alive. Gah, ah, gah, blood sloshed between his teeth, his pupils dilated and contracted unnaturally, and a painful groan that could only be described as inhuman escaped his throat. That day, every hit, every blast he had dealt to her, they all returned to torment his heart and soul like the worst torture in the entire world. When he looked up in soundless pain, he felt like he could almost see the bloodied Xianxia again. She had painted a picture of infinite loneliness, coldness, and bleakness as she flew away from him in her blood-drenched red dress. He flew mindlessly after the illusion, hoping to find even the slightest trace of her from all those years ago. Eventually, he left the eastern divine region and arrived at the god realm of absolute beginning. A white mist surrounded the abyss of nothingness. He stood at its edge and watched the bottomless abyss that turned everything into nothing. This was the graveyard she had chosen for herself. He and Xianxia had grown up together in floating Cloud City. However, his clearest memory of her was her in her red wedding dress. That was 16 years ago. Everything else before that, his childhood and adolescent memories of her, was just a blur now. In a twist of irony, his final memory of her was also of her in a red dress. In one memory, she looked as beautiful as a goddess who descended from the heavens. In the other, she looked like a cracked sculpture that tethered on the brink of collapse. "Xianxia, remember this. In the end, I didn't die at your hands." Bang. Xianxia sank powerlessly to his knees. At this point, even the gray despair in his eyes was fading away bit by bit into soulless, mindless nothingness. The chance was minuscule at best, but you knew that there was a chance I might come to know everything one day. That was why you spent your last strength breaking free from my grip and killed yourself before I could. You never stopped caring about me even in your last moments. Xianxia. He wasn't sure if he hallucinated it, but he thought he heard the shocked, disbelieving voice of a woman. Junzile couldn't believe her eyes or her senses when she arrived and saw the kneeling, trembling Xianxia. He didn't react to her arrival or her voice, and the hand clutching the place where his heart was bloodless and strained to breaking point. It almost looked like he was trying to claw out his heart with his bare hand. Are you okay?" Junzile took 2 tentative steps forward, but she froze like a frightened rabbit when she finally made contact with his aura. He wasn't hurt anywhere, but his aura had fallen into complete chaos. His complexion was so impossibly pale that it resembled a wax paper. Junzile didn't know what to do. He's Emperor Yun, ruler of the 4 divine regions. What in the world could make him? Suddenly, Xianxia's deathly pale face flushed red. P-whack! Then, he spat out a long, long jet of blood into the bottomless abyss of nothingness in front of him. As the last vestiges of color in his pupils faded completely, he collapsed forward like a lifeless puppet. Xianxia! Junzile let out an exclamation of utter shock. Finally discarding her reservations, she rushed forward to catch him before he hit the ground. Because she had reacted instinctively, she didn't realize that she had positioned herself in a way where Xianxia's face would fall right on top of her chest. For a second, Junzile froze and couldn't process what just happened to her. When she came to and tried to push Xianxia away, though, she abruptly realized that he wasn't moving at all. After shifting Xianxia's head from her chest to her knees a bit panikedly, she discovered that he had fallen unconscious. However, even in this state, he was gritting his teeth, and his features were twisting uncontrollably in pain. The bloody bite marks on his lips only made this whole situation even more shocking. Behind her, an ancient presence slowly approached. "Master," Junzile asked in a daze, what's happening to him?" Jun Wuming let out a small sigh before answering. To hurt so bad it was as if the soul was severed and the heart was burned. He must be suffering from a terrible psychological trauma. Psychological trauma? Junzile looked at the man beneath her and felt a rare pang of pain. At his height and life experience, the only person who can corner him to this extent is himself, Jun Wuming said in a murky tone. If I had to guess, he probably discovered that he had a hand in something that he absolutely can't forgive himself for. Something he absolutely can't forgive himself for. She subconsciously caressed his cheek in an attempt to alleviate some pain from his twisting features. Despite her master's reply, she still couldn't imagine the thing that had driven him to this state. He was untouchable both in terms of power and status today. So what else was left in this universe that could pain him so? What could he not forgive himself for? A distant, transient sigh cut through a world of infinite gray. To think that the truth of everything would hurt you so. Xianxia's consciousness was falling and falling in the gray world. It felt like he would never reach the bottom. "It's you." The distant voice of a woman gradually became familiar to him. This wasn't the first time he had heard her voice, but his memories vanished every time he left this strange soul world. He would only recall them when he returned to it. "I shouldn't have forced myself to manifest, but too many cracks have appeared in your heart. At this rate, the name Xianxia will become your eternal wound and suffering. I can never accept that, and so your eternal wound will become my eternal wound as well. That is why I must interfere even when I shouldn't." Qing Yue. He didn't expect to hear her name in this world. The pain felt as raw as ever. "Who are you and what do you mean?" he asked. "You will know who I am. It is still too early, but there is probably no other way to save you besides showing you the whole truth, unless you are willing to let me wipe away your memories of her. Xianxia would forever vanish from your mind, and with it all of your sorrow, regrets, and hatred. You would not hurt or suffer if you didn't remember her in the first place. You would be able to live the rest of your life happy and carefree. Forget Xianxia forever? No. No, no, never, never." His roar was so terrible that he nearly knocked himself out. "I will never forget her, I mustn't." His soul's struggle was so intense that the gray world itself was distorting slightly. "All I have left of her are these memories, and no one will take them away from me. No one." The expected answer. The distant woman's voice answered with a quiet sigh. "I have witnessed the bonds of the living for countless lifetimes, and still they remain as enigmatic as ever. Then again, I hardly have the right to scorn another for their bonds when I've fallen into the same trap myself. Xianxia," she said his name, "I will tell you all of the karma that has bound the person named Xianxia. I don't know if it will be enough to heal the damage you've suffered, but at the very least, I hope it will stop you from plunging deeper into the abyss. Otherwise, in the future, I will never be able to forgive myself." Mad desire and hope rose from his chest as he asked, You know everything about Qingyu. I can imprint the karma and the truth of everything to your soul right now, but I believe you would prefer to experience her unknown past via your own senses. She possesses the mark of nothingness just like you, although hers is nowhere as pure as yours. Still, it should be enough to perform one recollection of nothingness. You only need to find a possession that has become tinged with her aura of nothingness. Now then, if you wish to live through her past with your own senses, then seek out a possession that has accompanied Qingyu for 3 years or more. You will find it. The voice faded away, and the gray world slowly dissipated like smoke. Xianxia abruptly opened his eyes in the real world. This time, the memories of that mysterious gray space and transient voice didn't fade away from his mind. He remembered every word as clear as day. Seek out a possession that has accompanied Qingyu for 3 years. A possession of Qingyu? He sat up before he could even identify his current location. However, a feminine cry of surprise temporarily caught his attention. You are, his mind clicked. He was currently at the center of the god realm of absolute beginning. The abyss of nothingness was behind him, Jun Zile was next to him, and Jun Wuming was looking in his direction a short distance away. He didn't have the time to explain even a single word, however. He lurched forward, his disorientation causing him to hit the ground hard before he staggered back to his feet and took to the air. A possession that has accompanied Qingyu for 3 years or more. The words replayed themselves a bit disjointedly in his mind again and again. He should probably wonder about the identity of the owner of the voice and why she knew everything. He just couldn't spare the thought right now. The moon god realm, the easiest place to find such an item, had been annihilated by none other than himself. It was the same for all the possessions of Xia Qingyu on his person. He had destroyed them in hate during his time at the northern divine region. 1,000,000 regrets wouldn't be enough to describe even 1/1,000,000th of the regret he was feeling right now. He rushed out of the god realm of absolute beginning and traveled to the southern divine region immediately. His return to Emperor Yun City had been accompanied by a violent storm that scared all of its guards shitless. Before they could figure out what was going on, he had already passed through the dimensional formation linking Emperor Yun City to the profound sky continent and teleported there. Floating Cloud City, Xia residence. After descending in the courtyard with a thump and sucking the nearest servant into his grip, he asked, "Which one of these rooms is Qingyu's bedroom? Tell me now." When he was younger, he often came here to play with Xia Yuanba, but for some reason, he couldn't remember where young Xia Qingyu's bedroom was at all. The poor servant was of course scared out of his wits. For the second time, the first time being Kai Weiao, he pointed a shivering finger toward the innermost bedroom. He appeared in front of the room in a flash, but he caught himself and withdrew his aura to harmless levels. Then he slowly pushed the door open with a trembling palm. He found exactly what Kai Weiao had found back then. All he found was the simplest of furnishings and not even a speck of Xia Qingyu anywhere. He turned around and sucked the stunned servant into his grip again. He asked while breathing heavily, "Why is her room so empty? Where is all the stuff she left behind? Where is it? The deathly pale servant opened and closed his mouth at least a dozen times before he finally remembered how to speak. "We never touched the Miss Room." After he swept the entire Xia residence a dozen or so times to no avail, he pushed the servant away and vanished into the spatial rift he tore. Shred, at the Black Moon Merchants Guild, a rift suddenly appeared right in front of Xia Hongyi. Yun Qi then stepped right out of it. Before he could say a single word, a wild-looking Yun Qi appeared right in front of him and said in a most urgent voice, "Uncle Xia, do you have any of Qingyu's possessions with you? Clothes, jewelry, anything?" Yun Qi was already doing his best to control himself, but he still looked absolutely shocking to Xia Hongyi. Thankfully, the old man quickly calmed himself and replied without thinking, "I don't have anything of Qingyu with me." "Nothing? Not even one?" Yun Qi asked in a disbelieving tone. "No." Xia Hongyi shook his head with great certainty. "You need to calm down, chair. What happened?" He didn't get a reply. It was because Yun Qi was already gone. It's fine. There's still Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace. She stayed there for years. She must have left something behind." A spatial rift appeared at the snow region of extreme ice. The nearby wind and snow were immediately blown away. The unnatural disruption caused both Chu Yuechen and Chu Yueli to look up. It was Yun Qi descending toward them. "Why have you returned at this time?" Chu Yuechen frowned slightly. "Where's Wuxin?" There was no time for any of her questions. He grabbed her shoulders and asked hurriedly, "Yuechen, did Qingyu leave behind any possessions in Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace? Give them to me. Give me everything." Both Chu Yuechen and Chu Yueli were very astonished. Kai Weiao had made the almost same strange request when she first visited Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace. Even more shocking was the fact that Yun Qi was saying Xia Qingyu's name in such an urgent, trembling tone when he had avoided it like a plague before. Instead of asking Yun Qi what happened, Chu Yuechen stared into his eyes and answered, "Did you forget? The old Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace was completely destroyed during the battle between Xunyu and Wenchen and the little demon Empress. Naturally, all of her possessions were destroyed. This Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace is brand new. Of course, we don't have Xia Qingyu's possessions here." Yun Qi turned stiff for a second, but he recalled something and turned to Chu Yueli next. You, Ellie, you used to be King Yu's master, right? You must have something that she gifted you or whatever, right? Unfortunately, no. Chu Yueli shook her head. Not having a possession of her to remember her by is, in fact, one of the deepest regrets of my life. The color in Yun Chi's eyes faded away. His arms fell limply by his sides, and the breath he had been holding escaped through his lips. He then sat down powerlessly on the cold, icy snow beneath him. Her home, frozen cloud immortal palace, the moon god realm. These were the only three places Xia Qingyu had stayed for a long duration during her short life. However, her house was empty. The moon god realm was destroyed by himself, and even frozen cloud immortal palace was. It was as if nothing except the memories of her were left in this world. No, this cannot be. I must be missing something. Calm down, calm down. Chu Yueli looked back and forth between Yun Chi and her older sister. She didn't know what to say in this situation. Chu Yuechen slowly crouched down in front of Yun Chi and asked him, "Tell me what happened. Is it related to King Yu?" Yun Chi didn't answer her. All of his thoughts were focused on clutching his own skull and calming himself down. However, the chaotic thoughts in his mind were impossible to stop. Every cell in his body was screaming to find Xia Qingyu's possessions as soon as possible. It was at this moment a cute and delicate girl bounced up to them with a look of pure happiness on her face. She said in a childish voice, "Great Palace Master, look, it's my very first ice mirror." The girl was a poor girl Chu Yueli had picked up from outside just 3 months ago. She had just begun practicing the frozen cloud arts, and this was the first time she converted her profound energy into ice. To her, it was a memory that she could remember for a lifetime. The girl's naturally ethereal voice seeped into Yun Chi's confused soul and brought him a sliver of clarity. "Ice mirror, mirror, the mirror." It was like a lightning bolt had struck him, or a spirit light had pierced through his soul. Yun Chi abruptly looked up and exploded toward the sky, leaving behind a storm of ice and a childish cry of surprise. The bronze mirror. Yun Chi was gone the second his mind made the connection, not pausing even to explain things to Chu Yuechen or Chu Yueli. The two women could only exchange stunned glances with each other, and it would be a long time before they finally regained their calm. Realm. At a calm river covered by swaying willow trees, Jin Yue and her younger sister were strolling along an emerald-green riverside. As it turned out, the dark devil people were nowhere as scary as the people had imagined them to be, and the enforcers carried out Emperor Yun's laws strictly but fairly. Amazingly, the world was actually a fairer and more peaceful place compared to what it was before. After the initial panic had faded, the atmosphere of the seven-star realm had become much different in just a couple of years. Sister, father, and grandpa have decided the date they will return to the eastern divine region. Are you really not going to follow them? Wire had grown into a quick-witted girl over the past few years. Many of her childish features had faded away and become replaced by an exquisite countenance not unlike her older sister's. But despite her growth, Wire never stopped liking to stick by her sister's side. She loved holding her hand and watching her gentle smile, even though behind it was a pool of sorrow that seemed like it would never fade. Jin Yue shook her head while staring at the path that seemed to stretch endlessly before her. Seven-Star Realm is a very peaceful place. I like it here even though it's only been a short few years. Maybe I'll even spend the rest of my life here. It wasn't like she never wanted to leave the Seven-Star Realm. She just couldn't. Listen up, you'd better leave this black sigil exactly where I put it. Don't ever think of trying to get rid of it. If I ever sense its existence disappearing, I will come back and annihilate your entire clan. Those eyes that used to be so warm and gentle had become a pair of violent, black storms. The young Master Yun she used to be on amicable terms with had become the Devil Master, destroyer of the Moon God realm. And this cruel, black sigil he planted in her person was a curse she would never be able to escape for as long as she lived. That was why it was a good thing that her family was leaving. The further away they were from her, the safer they would be. In that case, I'll stay behind and keep you company, okay? Wire had said this with grave determination. It wasn't a product of quick impulse. She seemed to have arrived at this decision a long time ago. No. However, Jin Yue denied her without hesitation and faced toward her younger sister with stern, immovable eyes. Where great-grandpa's star realm is no king realm, but it is still an upper star realm. The environment decides a person's growth and future, and this is especially so for someone your age. You are not to act willfully in this matter, or you'll quickly find that I am not the only one who will disagree with you. Jin Yue's tone alone made it clear that there was absolutely no chance Wire was going to change her mind. The girl lowered her head a bit dejectedly before asking, "Say, sister, do you think you will marry in the future?" Jin Yue shook her head and shot her a sorrowful smile. "No, won't you feel lonely if you're always alone?" "I'll get used to it," she replied quietly. Although Wire wasn't an adult yet, she could still sense the sorrow and helplessness buried deep within her heart. A short while later, she asked another question. "Do you still miss the moon god emperor sister?" Jin Yue's footsteps slowed for a second. She wasn't able to say a word in response. Wire continued. "These days, everyone says that Emperor Yun is really a very good person. They say that he once saved the god realm from a world-ending calamity, and that he chose forgiveness even after he became Emperor Yun. They also say that the god realm will definitely march to a brighter future under his leadership." "He was a very good person," Jin Yue muttered in a daze. But, Wire's voice grew softer. "They also say that the moon god emperor was a terrible person. They say that she chose ingratitude during Emperor Yun's direst moment, and that karma came back to bite her and the moon god realm because of her actions. They say that she was one of the main reasons Emperor Yun chose death and destruction when he took his revenge, which means that she was at least partially to blame for all the star realms and people who have been destroyed." "Stop. Stop," Jinner interrupted Wire and carefully looked into the distance so that her younger sister wouldn't notice the pain in her eyes. "Remember this, Wire. No matter what the world thinks of her, she will always be the person I admire the most. Although she changed a lot after that fateful day, and it grew to the point where she wouldn't even allow me to get close to her, it is still the greatest honor of my life to have served her." Her eyes gradually became unfocused and misty as she murmured more to herself than where. "Also, despite what people say, I kept having this strange feeling that she was hiding some sort of secret and sorrow, that she hadn't chosen to do what she did because she wanted to. Even now, I can't stop wondering if the real reason she chased me away was to protect me." Rumble suddenly. A dull, distant rumble hit them. Then Jin Yue felt an unnatural, terrifying aura surging toward them at high speed. Heart suddenly leaping to her throat, Jin Yue tried to push her younger sister away from her. "Run, Wire!" Shred. She was too late. The person she dreaded the most to meet since that day appeared so fast that space itself was temporarily severed. Jin Yue felt like someone had submerged her entire body in cold ice. She pulled Wire behind her before saying, "Emperor Yun." Yun Qi didn't waste any words. He simply stretched out his hand at her and ordered, "Give me the bronze mirror she left behind." Jin Yue's heart sank to the bottom. Something wasn't quite right about the man in front of her. His eyes were a pair of black pools of enigma as usual, but she felt like something was shivering behind them. His voice was also strangely raspy for some reason. Still, his domineering tone and natural pressure were enough to choke her with fear and terror. The bronze mirror Xia Qingyu had ordered her to destroy was an inheritance from her own mother. It was the first time Jin Yue had disobeyed her orders because she was afraid that her master would come to regret her decision. She never thought that it would become her one and only memento of Xia Qingyu. Yun Qi had killed Xia Qingyu, and now he was going to take away even her last memento of her. But he couldn't deny him. Wire was right behind her, not to mention her family. She dared not hesitate for too long, nor did she possess the power to reject him. Slowly and painfully, she fished out the most important possession of her life. She hadn't even managed to relinquish her grip when a surge of profound energy snatched it right out of her fingers. When she looked, she saw that the bronze mirror was already in Yun Qi's hands. The dam in Jin Yue's eyes instantly broke. She felt as if someone had gouged out a hole from her heart, and it felt both unbearably painful and empty. It took all of her power to keep herself from sobbing out loud. The bronze mirror was small and delicate. It was made from a metal that was considered extremely common even among the lower realms. Yun Qi felt a moment of great excitement and relief when the mirror was finally in his grasp, but they were soon overwhelmed by even greater sorrow. He had the entire universe beneath his feet, but Xia Qingyu only had this tiny bronze mirror. He slowly and carefully held the mirror tight before turning his back on Jin Yue and Wire. Then he prepared to leave. "Young Master Yun!" A sobbing shout reached him from behind. Jin Yue was so desperate that she called him what she used to call him a long time ago instead of the far more appropriate Emperor Yun, or Devil Master. Perhaps Yun Qi had always been Young Master Yun to her. I know that Master is unworthy of you, but that's literally her last possession in this whole wide world. Whatever you do, just please, please don't destroy it. Her strength left her body after she begged with all her might. She dropped to one knee and started sobbing uncontrollably. For a short while, Xianxia didn't move a muscle. Then he slowly turned around to face her. She has never been unworthy to me. Instead of the brutality and darkness she expected, the reply was spoken with a sadness and pain that almost resonated with hers. She looked up and met his pitch-black eyes, but the darkness and oppressiveness in them a moment ago was nowhere to be found. "Jin Yue," he said softly while watching the woman in front of him, "there is almost no one in this universe who doesn't hate her. They all scoff at her decisions and ridicule her ending. You were the only one who still remembered her fondly and protected her important possession to this day." Jin Yue felt completely lost and befuddled as she watched him. Xianxia raised his hand again and slowly touched her shoulder. For a second, she thought she was going to do something terrible to her when a puff of black smoke left her body soundlessly. The dark sigil Xianxia had once implanted in her body was gone. Once, he had shamed Jin Yue thoroughly after encountering her simply because she used to serve Xia Qingyu. Today, he didn't know how he should express his gratitude or make up for past mistakes to the one woman who never lost faith in Xia Qingyu. Beneath Emperor Yun City, the star realm once known as the Southern Sea God Realm will be rebuilt as the Emperor Yun God Realm within a century at most. Xianxia watched Jin Yue's eyes as he said slowly and gravely, "You and your clan may join it and enjoy 100 generations of protection." Jin Yue's vision shook and grew blurry. She felt like she was dreaming. "One more thing," Xianxia continued. "I never found those vanished moon gods and moon god divine envoys. I bet Qingyu hid them away in a safe place before she left. I will find them and—" he sucked in a deep breath before continuing. "I don't know how many years it will take, but be it 10,000 years, 100,000 years, or my whole life. I will return the moon god realm to the god realm one day." Xianxia left, but Jin Yue still hadn't awoken from her dream. "Sister, sister!" It took a while, but Wire's voice finally reached her and brought her back to the world. Starlight returning to her tearful eyes, she abruptly hugged Wire and cried for a very long time. A girl's cry resounded across the emerald green riverside for a very long time. She had cried by herself in secret for countless times throughout the years, but none was as relieving and refreshing as this one. Xianxia didn't leave the seven-star realm. He simply found an uninhabited place and chased away all the creatures with his aura before settling down. He leaned against a dry, hard stone wall and held the bronze mirror lightly against his chest. Then he slowly closed his eyes. This time, he heard the transient voice immediately after he submerged into the soul world. "It looks like you found a medium that can be used to perform a recollection of nothingness. Her mark of nothingness is incomplete to begin with, and the aura of nothingness on this object has faded with time. The recollection will not cover her whole life. I cannot predict what you may experience from it, but I believe that it will be enough." Xianxia didn't respond to the voice. He was fully focused on his desire to know everything. An invisible, untouchable, soundless power connected the bronze mirror in Xianxia's hands and his soul. The woman's voice became distant, and the gray world suddenly faded away into nothing. There was a bright light and a rush of wind, and an impossibly clear world suddenly appeared around him. His soul became as taut as a string the second he made sense of the world. All of his focus became concentrated on a certain snow-white figure. Blood was dripping down her lips, and her arms were stained in red. Even so, her pale complexion failed to diminish the beauty that couldn't be portrayed by mere ink and color. "Qing Yue," his soundless cry reverberated across every corner of his own soul. An empty illusion this might be, but he had finally met her again. The Qingyu he was seeing was not the moon god emperor she became, however. Her younger features and eyes that hadn't yet become tainted by the weight and pressure of reality were from an older time. The white robes she wore, Xianxia recognized them immediately as the robes of frozen cloud immortal palace. It was one of the darkest moments of Xia Qingyu's life. Xianxia had perished in the primordial profound arc. The Blue Wind Nation was being trampled by the divine Phoenix Empire and facing the threat of annihilation. And even frozen cloud immortal palace was backed against the wall and just waiting for death to claim them. It had been so bad that the entire frozen cloud immortal palace had unanimously agreed to send her, their final hope through the dimensional formation left behind by the great ancestor master, Meiyin, to carry on the flame. However, the world she was teleported to was of a higher plane than she ever knew. The natural spirit energy of this world was unnaturally rich. and the people here were powerful beyond imagination and resistance. Xianxia was a tyrant profound practitioner at the age of 20, an unprecedented achievement back in her homeworld. In this new world, though, the very first two people she met had backed her into a dead end with the merest flick of a finger. Standing before her were two profound practitioners in blue robes. They were both in the divine origin realm. In the God realm, the divine origin realm was but the starting line of one's divine way. However, to Xianxia, it was a wall of despair she couldn't hope to surpass no matter what. My oh my, she probably rivals even the legendary Dragon Queen and Lady Goddess, the man to her right said with lust-filled eyes and grabby hands. If we offer her to the sect master as tribute, I bet that he would reward us with 10 blue scale pellets at the very least. Shh, shut your trap. We are dead if anyone happens to hear your blasphemy, the guy to her left rebuked his companion harshly. However, his lips quickly curled into a smirk. I've seen many beauties, but one so extraordinary I dare say that she may tempt even a god-emperor to sinfulness. In a different place and time, she would be the exclusive property of a realm king, and we would be punished for the crime of staring at her for too long. However, she's clearly no one important, and she is only a mortal realm tyrant. He looked at his companion with half-lidded eyes. Are you sure you want to offer her to the sect master? If even you don't want to give her up, then I can only support your decision, can't I? The two men exchanged a most ugly and evil laugh with each other. Everything Xianxia had heard, Yunqi also heard as a matter of course. He locked his spiritual perception on the duo and memorized every characteristic of their persons. He almost hoped that they were still alive and well in the present. If they were, he would personally put them through the cruelest torture imaginable in the primal chaos, even if they didn't deserve even one lick of his attention. Xianxia slowly raised her blood-drenched arm and summoned a new sheen of ice across her sword. Ho, still going to resist futilely? The profound practitioner to her right casually pointed a finger at her and flicked it as if in jest. Ding, the ice shattered and the sword snapped in half. However, the broken sword Xianxia was holding traveled toward her neck instead. She had baited them into assisting her in committing suicide. At the same time, she gathered all of her profound energy to destroy her own life vein. Both profound practitioners blanched when they realized what was happening. They didn't think that Xianxia was the type of woman who would rather break than yield to them. They let out strange cries and pounced toward her, but everything was moving too quickly. Divine origin realm or not, there was no chance they would be able to stop her in time. It was at this moment a dull yet impossibly terrifying boom resounded from the distant sky. It was the sound of space itself being shifted. At the same time, a pressure powerful enough to encompass the entire world fell from the sky. Xianxia's sword froze before it could make contact with her snow-white neck. The profound energy she gathered to destroy her own life vein had frozen as well. The pressure enveloping her entire being was utterly ineffable. It froze her body and aura so thoroughly that she couldn't move a finger even if she mustered all of her strength into one point. It was the same for the other two profound practitioners. A small, profound arc about 300 meters long appeared in the sky. One, standing at the bow of the arc, was a middle-aged man in light purple robes with his hands clasped behind his back. The profound arc was kicking up a powerful gale as it moved, but none of them could affect the middle-aged man in any way. All the light in the world seemed to focus on his person until one could see nothing but him. The mere sight of him made the two profound practitioners feel like dropping to their knees and kowtowing in submission. That wasn't all. The profound symbol they glimpsed on the profound arc right before it shifted out of view caused their pupils to dilate to breaking point. It was a divine moon, the totem of the moon god realm. Not even in their wildest dreams did they imagine that they would make contact with a king realm one day. Suddenly, the man on the bow shifted his gaze. As if in response, a soul-shattering beam of divine energy flew toward Xianxia and the duo. However, both the beam and the profound arc suddenly froze as if time itself had skidded to a stop. Then, amidst the frozen space, the man slowly descended on soil so humble that it wasn't even worthy to be stepped on by him. 3 figures followed behind their master and descended the ground as well. However, their eyes were filled with surprise and puzzlement. By now, the 2 blue-robed profound practitioners were so shocked that their hearts and even their blood flow had slowed to a complete stop. It took all of their remaining willpower to bend their knees and speak in trembling voices. We greet the venerable moon gods. They didn't know, and would never believe it even if they did know, that the man standing before them was none other than the Moon God Emperor Yue Wuya himself. To be fair, the three moon guards behind Yue Wuya couldn't understand why their Moon God Emperor had personally descended to deal with something so trivial and common. While Xia Qingyu was breathtakingly beautiful, they all knew that their Moon God Emperor wasn't a wanton man, especially since a certain incident. He had barely had any physical contact with any other woman except her. Suddenly a thought crossed their minds all at once. Wait a second, this woman, is it just me, or does she look a little like? A moon guard couldn't help but send his companions a sound transmission. Silence! He was immediately quieted by both of his companions. Yue Wuya didn't afford the two blue-robed, profound practitioners even an instant of his attention. From the beginning, he had been watching Xia Qingyu and Xia Qingyu alone. He was the one who froze her broken blade and her profound energy before she could kill herself. "What is your name?" he asked. His voice sounded about as indifferent and dignified as one might expect from a god emperor, but no one knew that he was really pushing down an unnatural surge of anticipation and hopefulness that even he had no idea of where it was coming from. Xia Qingyu watched the man who descended from the sky and cowed the two villains to utter stillness with just his presence. She had no doubt that he was an extraordinarily powerful and important man, even in this world. His eyes showed that he was a man who was long used to being in power, and common sense dictated that she should tread very carefully around him. And yet, not only did she feel no danger from him, she even felt a sense of inexplicable trust toward him. Xia Qingyu. This was the first time she spoke her name in this strange world. An unfamiliar name, a profound aura that hadn't yet entered the divine way. Yue Wuya frowned and was about to ask another question when he noticed something. His pupils contracted in realization. The heart of snow-glazed glass? At Yue Wuya's height, there was almost nothing that could unsettle him anymore. However, he and the three moon guards behind him were clearly stunned by his words. One would think that Yue Wuya's next question would have something to do with the heart of snow-glazed glass. But instead, it was something that seemed to make no sense whatsoever. "Are you 22 years old right now?" A trace of confusion flashed across Xia Qingyu's eyes. "Yes or no?" Yue Wuya asked in a harsher tone. His eyes were even trembling a little. "Yes," Xia Qingyu replied. Her answer caused Yue Wuya's chest to heave greatly for an instant. A short silence later, he said, "Kill them." The moon guard in the middle acted the moment he said those words. The two blue-robed, profound practitioners never even got the chance to scream before they dissolved into ashes under a burst of moonlight. By the time the blast faded, even those ashes had become completely scattered into nothingness. Still standing where he was, Yue Wuya said, "Now kill yourselves." The emotionless voice caught all three moon guards by surprise. All three of them dropped to their knees as the moon guard to the right said panikedly, "God Emperor, we are absolutely loyal to the moon god realm." He didn't finish his sentence because a sudden explosion had interrupted him. It was the moon guard who killed the two profound practitioners earlier, committing suicide via detonating his own life vein. In this world, there is only one type of person that can be trusted to keep a secret. The dead. Yue Wuya slowly closed his eyes. The moon guards of my moon god realm cannot not understand something so simple. The two remaining moon guards shivered but fell silent. If their god emperor wanted them to die, then they must die. Disobeying him would only earn them a worse death and bring harm to their families. Buzz. And so the two moon guards unleashed the final moonlight of their lives and committed suicide. All three moon guards were powerful divine sovereigns who could reign as kings in a middle star realm. Now, they were all dead because Yue Wuya willed it so. At the time, Xia Qingyu was far too green to even understand what was going on around her. After rising to her feet and gathering the only wisp of profound energy she could control to her fingertips, she asked, "Who are you?" She looks like her age is a match, and it's clear from her murky, profound energy that she just ascended from a lower realm. He muttered dazedly to himself instead of answering Xia Qingyu's question. For a second heart of snow-glazed glass to appear in this world, it can only be her. It was impossible to tell if his expression was one of excitement or pain right now. "Answer me one last question," he asked again. "Did your mother leave you when you were 4 years old?" Xia Qingyu's eyes shook violently. "Actually, forget it." However, Yue Wuya had turned away before he could even see her reaction. Was it because he was afraid of hearing the answer he expected, or the opposite? "Come, I will take you to someone. Don't worry, I have no wish to harm you." If I did, you would not survive the flick of a finger even if you have 1,000,000 spare lives. If you turn down my offer, you will realize that your cultivation and your heart of snow-glazed glass will quickly drive you into the abyss." The scene turned blurry, and Xianxi's surroundings reverted to the previous gray. Xia Qingyu had encountered Yue Wuya the first day she was teleported to the God realm. She had actually told him about this, but it still pained Xianxi to witness the actual experience with his own eyes. She wasn't a divine way cultivator, and yet her features were excellent enough to tempt even a god emperor. No matter what Xia Qingyu did, it was always going to end in a horrible way for her unless a miracle happened. In fact, she had escaped one fatal situation only to enter a deeper abyss almost immediately. However, a miracle did happen. She had encountered Yue Wuya of all people and been taken away to the moon god realm before any real harm could be done to her. Something was curious about this memory, however. Yue Wuya's reaction after meeting Xia Qingyu for the first time had puzzled Xianxi greatly. Xianxi had never met Yue Wugu personally, but he had heard from Mu Xunian that Xia Qingyu was at best 3 to 4/10 similar to her mother in terms of appearance. At first glance, no one would think that she was the daughter of Yue Wugu. So why did Yue Wuya, a god emperor, choose to speak with Xia Qingyu after just one glance from the bow of his ship? Age, heart of snow-glazed glass, lower realm. As far as Xianxi could tell, Yue Wuya hadn't made the connection that Xia Qingyu might be Yue Wugu's daughter after asking these questions. It was the opposite. The possibility had popped in his mind almost the second he saw her, and the questions were just to confirm his suspicion. The grayish world faded once more, and a new scene unfolded in Xianxi's soul sea. It was an incredibly beautiful pocket world with green grass, clusters of flowers, and soothing rivers. The gentle moon hanging in the sky also added a layer of mystery to the landscape. The pocket world that practically no one could enter, and no one knew about, was located in the divine moon city of the moon god realm. Xia Qingyu was standing beneath a tall, massively broad tree with a bluish-green canopy. Two people were sitting face to face in front of her. The first person was the moon god emperor, Yue Wuya. The second person was a pale-looking woman in a red dress. Yue Wuya had one finger pressed against the area just above the solar plexus. It was where the heart vein was. His eyes were closed and his mind was fully focused. An indefinite amount of time later, pain suddenly flashed across his features. P-whack. His eyelids abruptly fluttered open, and his body began shaking violently. Despite his best attempts to suppress his reaction, he still spat out a mouthful of smelly blood that dyed the ground red. Wuya, the woman in red dress, hurriedly raised her hands to catch him. Her weak voice was tinged with deep panic. However, Yue Wuya caught her instead and smiled at her. "Calm down, it's just a bit of blood essence. It doesn't affect me at all." He was probably the only person in the entire universe who would make such an outrageous claim. 1. The woman in the red dress looked pale and haggard. The light in her eyes looked like it was losing strength. Her illness was so severe that her countenance was beginning to show signs of age. Even so, no one would doubt that she used to be devastatingly beautiful during her better days. Xianxi knew immediately that she was the mother of Xia Qingyu, Yue Wugu. He never thought that he would meet his mother-in-law, a woman who once shook the god realm with her beauty, and yet led a life that could only be described as miserable under such circumstances. Yue Wuya rose to his feet and smiled gently at her. "The healing process is growing smoother and smoother as of late. If you take about 24 hours of rest and avoid using your profound energy during this time, I'm sure you'll get better over time, Wugu." His expression was relaxed, but there was a flash of well-hidden pain in his eyes. Yue Wugu knew that he was trying to console her, so she responded with a peaceful smile and said, "Don't worry, Wuya, I'll do my best to recover. I still wish to accompany my daughter a couple more years after all. Thank you for your aid, Senior." She had witnessed this scene countless times already, and yet she never failed to be touched by it. Back then, her mother had suddenly regained her memories, and even some of her profound energy. However, it really was just a case of terminal lucidity. Yue Wugu was going to commit suicide, but she ultimately chose to return to the moon god realm with all her power just so that she could meet Yue Wuya one final time. She did this knowing full well she might be rebuked and shamed for her infidelity. She was even prepared to be killed by her old lover. However, Yue Wuya did the opposite of her fears and tried almost every method he could think of to drag out her life until now. He even went so far as to expend his precious blood essence again and again. It was almost as if her mother's life was so tragic that even the cruel heavens couldn't help but shower her with a bit of good luck. Yun-Chi was deeply moved by what he saw. It was just an illusion, but he could still see that Yue Wugu was a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any moment. He found it difficult to believe that the god emperor of a king realm would go so far as to expend his blood essence to extend a lover's life. It clearly wasn't even the first time he did it. Anyone would be stunned in his place. Suddenly, he recalled that Yue Wuya was the only god emperor to have died in Jasmine's hands when the king realms of the eastern divine region had ganged up on her. That Yue Wuya was one of Jasmine's most hated enemies was of course one of the reasons he died, but the prolonged expenditure of his blood essence might very well be the other. Qingyu, Yue Wuya turned his gaze on Xia Qingyu. I have something important I would like to speak to you about. Please speak, senior. She could see that Yue Wuya was serious about this. The moon god emperor took a moment to choose his words, but in the end he decided that he would speak frankly. I wish for you to become the moon god empress. Yun-Chi had known about this back then, so of course he wasn't shocked by the revelation at all. However, the same couldn't be said for the Xia Qingyu of the time. What did you say? Her brows knitted, and the gratefulness in her eyes instantly became replaced by frigidness. She even took a step away from him. It is not what you think it is. Please allow me the time to finish. Yue Wuya wasn't surprised by Xia Qingyu's reaction in the slightest. He continued in an indifferent tone, to put it simply, it will just be an empty title to you. You don't have to perform any of the duties that are expected of the moon god empress. Empty? Xia Qingyu's frown remained deep and frigid. If you are simply bestowing me the title of an imperial concubine, then sure. However, the moon god empress is a different thing entirely. A great wedding must be held and an invitation must be sent out to the entire god realm. The title is anything but meaningless. Calm down, Qingyu. This time, Yue Wugu was the one who spoke up. She shook her head with a smile and spoke with a voice that sounded like the soothing wind. I promise you that he has no interest in you that way. Just let him finish first, will you? Yue Wuya nodded. You are correct. I will be holding a great wedding, and I will send out invitations to all the realms. However, the bride who will be attending the marriage is your mother, not you. All I ask of you is to show your face one time. Xia Qingyu grew even more confused. What are you saying, senior? Yue Wuya explained. When the time comes, I shall hold the greatest divine moon in the sky in history in Divine Moon City. Before the wedding ceremony, you will appear briefly so that the world will memorize your face, your aura, and your name. They will realize that you possess the heart of snow-glazed glass and 9 profound, exquisite body, and understand why I made you the moon god empress. After that, I will execute the moon star substitution technique and transfer your aura to your mother. It won't last for too long, but combined with the rich moon aura of the divine moon in the sky, it will fool everyone long enough for us to finish the wedding ceremony with your mother. Yue Wuya slowly closed his eyes and said solemnly, It has always been my lifelong regret that I wasn't able to marry your mother back then. Ridiculous. The favors she owed to Yue Wuya were as heavy as a mountain, but she still couldn't stop herself from blurting the word. If you truly love my mother, if you truly wish to marry her, you wouldn't care about the opinions of the masses. Yue Wuya shook his head slowly. I won't defend myself. If one day you are in my position, you will understand that there are too many things which even a god emperor cannot resolve. However, marrying your mother and eliminating one of my lifelong regrets is but the secondary objective of my proposal. I'm doing this for your sake. For me. Qingyu, you may have come from the lower realms, but you understand how special you really are, right? Yue Wuya's voice deepened. The heart of snow-glazed glass, the 9 profound, exquisite body. Both of these traits, especially the heart of snow-glazed glass, which hadn't appeared again since 600,000 years ago, would be considered an unparalleled gift from the heavenly way. In fact, the previous owner of the heart of snow-glazed glass was the founding ancestor of the eternal heaven realm herself. However, for both the heart of snow-glazed glass and the 9 profound, exquisite body to appear on the same person, Yue Wuya sighed a little. I have gone through many scriptures in the past couple of years, so I can say with certainty that it is unprecedented in the entire history of the god realm. She did understand what he was saying. She was no longer the child who knew nothing when she first arrived in the god realm after all. For the past few years, you haven't taken a single step from this pocket world. It isn't an imprisonment, but it may as well be one. It is because your existence will shake the entire god realm the moment you reveal yourself to the world. The moment they learn that you have the heart of snow-glazed glass and the 9 profound, exquisite body, you will never enjoy peace in your life ever again. Will that title really protect me? Xianxia asked dubiously. Back then, the entire world knew that my mother was your empress back then, but she still failed to escape her villain's clutches. Xianxia's accusation dragged Yue Wuya's most painful memories into the light. His features contorted, and it took him a couple of moments before he finally calmed himself enough to say, "And I have learned my lesson. The empty title will not protect you, no?" He raised his arm and summoned a purple light that looked as pure as crystal. "But my purple pylon, divine power, and my throne will." This time, even Yue Wugu was surprised by his declaration. "He wasn't joking after all," Yue Wugu whispered to herself. "You want me to inherit your purple pylon, divine power?" Xianxia could hardly believe her ears. She was born in a lower realm, so of course she didn't possess the bloodline of her moon god. However, her 9 profound, exquisite body allowed her to inherit any divine power perfectly, even if it was the divine power of a moon god. "And my throne," Yue Wuya emphasized tirelessly. "King Yu, you are ultimately an outsider to the moon god realm, and even the fact that you carry both the 9 profound, exquisite body and the heart of snow-glazed glass isn't enough to make my realm treat you like one of our own. If we are to make you the moon god empress, however, then the objections against me passing my powers and my throne to you will not be so overwhelming that I cannot force it to happen." Xianxia shook her head slowly. "I don't understand." Yue Wuya looked Xianxia in the eye with none of the pressure a god emperor should have, and only the purest sincerity. "Believe me when I say that I haven't made this choice out of impulse. I have thought long and hard before I made up my mind." In summary, Yue Wuya was offering Xianxia his moon god divine power and the throne of a god emperor for a time. Even he couldn't believe that he would make such a decision. He was certain that Xianxia would accept his offer, though. There was no reason for her to reject the highest level of power and status available to the current universe, be it for her own safety or control over her own fate. However, he saw Xianxia slowly but firmly shaking her head in clear rejection. "Senior, the favors my mother and I owe you are as heavy as a mountain. If one day I have to die to repay them, I will still march to my death without a shred of regret or resentment in my heart." Xianxia's eyes were as clear as a mirror, and there was almost no struggle or hesitation in her voice whatsoever. "However, I cannot agree to this." "Why?" Yue Wuya frowned deeply in puzzlement. "Be it you, your mother, or me, this arrangement is absolutely beneficial to all of us. Even if something were to happen during the wedding ceremony, I am the one who will be bearing all the consequences. What possible reason do you have to reject this?" Xianxia simply closed her eyes and said, "I'm sorry for disappointing you." No one could possibly know what she was thinking right then. "King Yu, you—" "Enough, Wuya." Yue Wugu lightly interrupted her lover. "Do not force her if she doesn't wish to accept it." Her soft rebuke was enough to make Yue Wuya swallow his words back down his throat. He let out a quiet sigh and said, "Maybe I was too hasty. Do take your time to consider this, King Yu. Just know that I don't have much time left." "What do you mean?" Xianxia looked up. "It is exactly what it sounds like," Yue Wuya replied in an indifferent tone. "I have received a prophecy from the heavenly mystery realm. I will be dead in 5 years at most." He wanted to tell her that her mother was running out of time as well, but he couldn't possibly say such cruel things in the presence of Yue Wugu. Xianxia frowned slightly. "Senior, you are the moon god emperor. How can you believe in such?" "I know what you mean." Yue Wuya interrupted her before continuing in a low tone. "However, it is a prophecy from the heavenly mystery realm." He ended his talk with Xianxia on that ominous note before half-crouching beside Yue Wugu. After enveloping her in a blanket of gentle moonlight, he said, "Rest well, Wugu. I will return to see you tomorrow." Yue Wugu looked at him and said, "You are a busy man. You don't need to visit me so frequently." Yue Wuya simply smiled and brushed a finger across Yue Wugu's cheek. His movement was so gentle that it looked like he was touching a warm jade that might shatter at the slightest touch. Finally, he rose to his feet and walked away from the pocket world. After seeing Yue Wuya off, Xianxia moved to her mother's side and asked her in a soft tone, "Was what he said your wish too, mother?" Yue Wugu held her daughter's hands and said in an even but weak voice, "Yes, it is my lifelong regret that we weren't able to marry." But Xianxia's image flashed across Yue Wugu's eyes, pierced her heart, and spread the pain across her entire soul. She shook her head to clear the image before smiling. "It doesn't matter," You are my daughter, Qingyu. I want you to be able to live the life you wish to live. You don't have to force yourself to do something you don't want to do. Xia Qingyu's lips parted, but she didn't say anything. Speaking of which, Yue Wugu's gaze and smile suddenly grew warmer. It looks like your relationship with that Yunqi you spoke of was much deeper than you described. Startled, Xia Qingyu answered a bit dazedly. We were husband and wife, but we didn't consummate our marriage. Moreover, I left him after our wedding day, and the number of times we met each other again after that can be counted on 2 hands. With that in mind, how could it possibly be a deep relationship? Even so, Xia Qingyu shook her head. I find it difficult to accept such a proposal even though he is no longer in this world. Yue Wugu watched her daughter's eyes dotingly. I am sad that your boy didn't survive the jealousy of the heavens, but I still think he is very lucky to have someone like you care for him. Yue Wugu then changed the subject and said, however, you should understand just how great of a fortune and misfortune it is to possess both the 9 profound, exquisite body and the heart of snow-glazed glass. Had you cultivated without guidance in this ambitious and dangerous world, heaven knows how long it would have taken for you to leave this place. Xia Qingyu looked at the sky and said dazedly, I didn't even realize so much time had passed. When she wasn't accompanying her mother, she was either reading up on the god realm or cultivating. The latter took up at least 80% of the time she had been here. Now that he mentioned it, I actually feel like heading out to see how the outside world is doing. Oh, no, you don't. Yue Wugu shook her head smilingly. Even if you somehow convince me to say yes, he was the one who set up the barrier at the entrance. Only those who are directly connected to him by blood are allowed to enter this place. Also, you know why he imprisoned you here. It is so that you can enjoy the peace and quiet. I understand. Speaking of the outside world, Yue Wugu's voice suddenly softened and her eyes grew unfocused. Today is your father's birthday, isn't it? Xia Qingyu's lips parted as she mumbled, Father's birthday. Suddenly, she realized that she didn't remember her father's birthday. Maybe it was because she had spoken for too long for the day, but Yue Wugu's aura suddenly showed signs of weakening. Xia Qingyu hurriedly supported her mother, lay her down on the grass and said, Rest well, mother. Amen. Yue Wugu responded and closed her eyes. A short time later, she had fallen into a peaceful slumber. After watching over her mother for a moment, Xia Qingyu rose to her feet and walked almost aimlessly. Xia Hongyi, my father. It had been years since I met him, but I hadn't visited him even once after I entered the frozen cloud immortal palace. Today, I just realized that I didn't even remember his birthday. He deeply loved my mother. He would cry soundlessly to himself watching images of her. He often mumbled her name beneath his breath. He never played the string again after she left. I wanted him to reunite with my mother. It was the reason I began cultivating in the first place. So why do I remember so little about him? And why do I only have memories that are related to my mother? During my time in the god realm, I had thought about Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace, Yuanba, the fate of the Blue Wind Nation, and many more things. But not him. Not even once. I don't even remember his face very well anymore. He was my father for 16 years of memories, and they are so faint it's almost as if they never existed in the first place. Am I really such a cold-blooded person? She continued walking in this state for God knows how long. Before she knew it, she had arrived at the entrance of the pocket world. The light purple barrier glowed with a gentle but tenacious light. After staring at the barrier she couldn't step through for both tangible and intangible reasons, she suddenly found herself lifting a hand to touch it. She didn't know why. Instead of the expected resistance and dissonant noise, her hand passed right through it like it never was. For a long time, Xia Qingyu could only stare at her hand and the pierced barrier. After she withdrew it, she abruptly flew all the way back to her mother's side. Yue Wugu was still sleeping peacefully. Nearby her was the pool of blood that Yue Wuya had spat not long ago. Heart beating wildly for no apparent reason, Xia Qingyu summoned a bead of blood from her fingertip and another from Yue Wuya's blood. When the 2 beads of blood made contact with each other and mingled perfectly with one another, her eyes lost focus entirely. Author's note. Who else dares to call me short? Japanese letter number T/N. To provide context, one of the most popular lines Chinese web novel readers like to spam their author is short and impotent. 5. The blood beads fused into one bigger blood bead instantly, and without any resistance whatsoever. When the profound energy holding them afloat ran out, they slowly fell toward the ground before scattering on the verdant grass. For a long time, Xianxia simply stood there with a dazed, unfocused look on her face. It was like her soul had departed her body completely. Yun-Chi was almost as stunned himself. What is going on here? Not only did the barrier that should have barred everyone except a direct descendant not work on Xianxia, but her blood had merged perfectly with Yue Wuya's blood as well. That could only mean, what am I thinking? That's just impossible. Xianxia's birth father is without a doubt Xia Hongyi. Yue Wugu was still a virgin when Xia Hongyi found her. Moreover, it was only in their 3rd year together that they had Xianxia. It was just impossible for Xianxia to be the daughter of Yue Wuya. Did Xia Hongyi lie then? Was she already pregnant when he found Yue Wugu? That made even less sense. Xia Hongyi and Yue Wugu had married during the 2nd year, conceived Xianxia during their 3rd, and Xia Yuanba during their 4th. The entire floating cloud city knew about this. They might have been able to fool one person or 10, but an entire city? Impossible. It was at this moment Yun-Chi recalled the doubts Kai Weiao had voiced to him some time ago. He was way too indifferent toward Xianxia's death. Xia Yuanba is the bearer of the tyrannical emperor's divine veins and a firm mind, yet he can barely control his pain after hearing the news. On the other hand, all I felt from Xia Hongyi was a flash of pain. In fact, I felt more shock and pity from him. He reacted how a person would when they heard of their neighbor's daughter's death. You are a father with only one daughter to your name. You know better than me how unusual his reaction was. He is no profound way fool or cold-blooded ruler, but he could be emotionally detached by nature. That is the only other possibility I can think of anyway. People like that do exist. Like a person who is born without an arm or a leg, some are born without the 7 emotions and 6 desires that drive us all. However, his extreme reaction towards Yue Wugu's death contradicted that completely. Which brings us back to the question, why is a man this passionate reacting so coolly and rationally toward his daughter's death? There was barely any sorrow at all. Do you still remember why Xianxia was obsessed with cultivating the profound way? Yes, long story short. She wanted to find her mother and reunite her family. That is correct. Chu Yuechen told me the same thing. This tells us that she was a woman who cherished familial bonds deeply. At the very least, she was someone who gave it her all just to seek out a mother she barely remembered. So why did a woman who values love and familial bonds so much not visit her father even once after she married you and traveled to Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace? Yun-Chi feigned indifference back then, but he wasn't nearly as indifferent as he looked. Today, her words had surfaced from his memories and mingled with the scene in front of him into a hot pot of utter confusion. Xia Hongyi had acted unusually indifferent when he heard of Xianxia's death. Yue Wuya had personally appeared to Xianxia, a lower realm denizen despite being a god emperor. If he had to make up an explanation for this, the indifference was because they weren't blood-related, and the profound attraction was because they were. However, even if Xia Hongyi wasn't Xianxia's birth father, they had still lived under the same roof for 16 years. How was it possible they were so indifferent toward each other that it was almost to the point of being strangers? What was going on here? Where was the contradiction? Did Xia Hongyi weave a lie that somehow fooled everyone? Or was the fusion of 2 bloods that should be utterly incompatible with each other just a coincidence? Xianxia had never spoken to him about this. Naturally, he didn't know that she had been carrying a burden like this until now. It was at this moment that Yue Wugu opened her eyes. It was almost as if she had sensed her daughter's distress. She pushed herself into a sitting position and noticed that her daughter was staring mindlessly ahead. She hadn't noticed her awakening or rising at all. "Qingyu," she called out softly. Xianxia twitched and she finally returned to herself. However, there was still a bit of mistiness in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Yue Wugu asked concernedly after noticing her daughter's abnormal reaction. "Were you thinking about his proposal?" Xianxia shook her head. She sat down beside her mother and watched her eyes. A while later, she finally asked in a very soft voice, "Mom, did you sleep with Senior God Emperor before you encountered Dad?" "Of course not," Yue Wugu answered without hesitation before shaking her head smilingly. "Wuya had wanted to leave everything until our wedding night. In his words, he wasn't willing to tarnish my name one until then." "I told you this a long time ago, didn't I? Why are you bringing it up again?" Yue Wugu's answer did nothing to chase away the mistiness in her eyes. Still staring into her mother's eyes, she murmured almost unconsciously, "Really? Not even once?" The abnormal reaction visibly startled Yue Wugu. Then a bolt of realization struck her. Her expression turned both panicked and painful at the same time. She gripped her daughter's hands tightly and said in an urgent voice, "Please believe Mom, King. I've never slept with him, not now, and definitely not before I knew your dad. Never." Yue Wugu's suddenly disordered aura and terribly sorrowful voice finally brought Xianxia fully back to the world. At the same time, she realized just how deeply she had wounded her mother with her words. "Mom, no. That wasn't what I meant," she tried to explain herself. "King, Yue Wugu teared up as she tried to inject gentleness back into her voice. "I know I let your dad, you and Yuanba down. I don't deserve to be called a wife or a mother for having abandoned all of you that day." "No, that's not it." Xianxia shook her head with all her might. Her earlier days had all transformed into panic and self-blame. Yue Wugu watched her daughter with tear-stained cheeks. "The heavens have already pitied me once and united me and my grown-up daughter, and to think that I dare to demand more. I cannot believe I was so engrossed in my selfish desires that I completely forgot about the harm it would bring to you. King, I don't have any regrets left in this life, not since the heavens allowed me to enjoy your company for the past couple years." Yue Wugu caressed her daughter's cheek gently. "Don't worry, I will never force you to do something you don't wish to do. Just the same, I will never allow a thing you don't wish to happen. Mom, you got it all wrong. This really is just a misunderstanding." Xianxia shook her head again before grabbing her mother's shoulders and staring into her eyes. "Listen to me, Mom. You didn't let anyone down, much less did anyone wrong your whole life. Be it you, Dad, or Senior God Emperor, you are all blameless victims. It is the villain who hurt you back then who is to blame." She had witnessed and felt the horrible tragedy that was her mother's life. She also knew of the innumerable wounds, regrets, and pain weighing down her heart. Her mother had become excessively sensitive and fragile from all the burdens, and she had just dealt a severe blow to her with her thoughtless murmurs. Every tear dripping down her mother's cheeks had splashed against her soul. Her mother's nervousness, trepidation, absolute horror at the thought of having hurt her daughter, and the ensuing words that might as well be a vicious oath all made Xianxia realize just how selfish her earlier stubbornness was. "I asked you that question because I want to tell you that." She wiped away the tear stains on her mother's face before continuing. "I've changed my mind. I've decided to accept Senior God Emperor's proposal." However, not only did Yue Wugu look consoled by her daughter's reply, she unconsciously tightened her grip around her hands and said urgently, "King, I just told you you don't have to force yourself to do something you don't wish to do, much less for someone like me. I'm not forcing myself to do this, and I'm definitely not just doing it for Mom." Xianxia shook her head and responded with a tearful smile of her own. "It's just that Senior God Emperor was right. Without sufficient power, my special talents and gifts from heaven will only bring me unending tribulations. I still have no concept as to what a God Emperor's throne really entails, but I do know that the Moon God Divine Power is among the highest powers available in the world right now. It is something a normal person could not hope to obtain in 1,000 lifetimes, and yet it was offered to me on a silver platter. It is both a much better gift from heaven and exactly what I need. I simply don't have a reason to reject it." Yue Wugu watched Xianxia's eyes closely to see if she was forcing herself. Do you really think that?" "Amen," Xianxia nodded. "I know you've always held a deep-seated regret toward us. I know you can't stand me suffering even the slightest bit of grievances or harm. However, you really haven't done anything wrong or let anyone down, Mom. You left us not because you were heartless, but because fate is a cruel mistress. Out of all of us, there was no one who was more hurt than you. Also, you and Dad were properly divorced before you left. As a free woman, it is entirely up to you to choose whoever you wish to marry. You need not be held hostage by your own guilty conscience." Xianxia's smile grew a tad gentler. "As for me, you definitely don't owe me anything. I am your daughter. You may not have raised me, but you still gave birth to me. I wasn't able to do anything for you when I was younger, so I would only be infinitely happy to help you accomplish one of your greatest wishes in life." The dam in Yue Wugu's eyes broke down completely. "King, my daughter?" Yue Wugu hugged Xianxia tightly. She still couldn't determine if her daughter was speaking from the heart or just making a compromise, but for the first time, she truly felt that she could pass away to the afterlife with no regrets. Have you really come around to the proposal?" The next day, Yue Wuya was overflowing with joy after hearing Xianxia's answer. He himself was surprised by how glad and relieved he felt. "Yes," Xianxia nodded solemnly. She looked so tranquil that even Yue Wuya, a god emperor, couldn't pick up any particular emotion that stood out compared to the rest. However, I have 2 requests. Okay, Yue Wuya nodded without hesitation. Speak. First, Xia Qingyu's expression grew even more serious as she took a pause. Her gaze also looked a bit evasive for some reason. I would like to formally become Senior's adopted daughter. Yue Wuya looked surprised by the request, but he quickly shook his head with a smile. You underestimate me, Qingyu. You are Wugu's daughter, so I will never harbor any lustful intent toward you. Your insurance is unnecessary. He thought Xia Qingyu had requested the adoption to protect herself from him. You've misunderstood me, Senior. However, Xia Qingyu's expression remained as calm as ever, and her gaze as pure as the divine moon in the sky. Senior's favor unto me and my mother is as heavy as the mountains. My request is purely personal. I realize that the request is fairly outrageous for a humble and meritless woman such as I, but I would be very pleased if Senior accepts it. Her seriousness and the slight tremor in her voice stunned not just Yue Wuya, but also Yue Wugu. Okay. Yue Wuya nodded strongly when he said the first okay, and he broke into a wide smile when he said the second. Not now, though. If you are to become my adopted daughter, then we must hold a grand ceremony to celebrate it. Maybe not one that requires invitations to be sent to the entire god realm, but certainly one that will be remembered across the eastern divine region. Ha, he guffawed, and was again surprised by how happy he felt. Xia Qingyu closed her eyes. A long time later, she continued, As for my next request, please tell me who the one who hurt my mom so badly was, Senior. Her late husband. Her sect, her homeland, each time she had been pained and powerless to change their fates. This time, though, she would not fail. It was said that the crime of harming one's mother was bigger than the crime of harming heaven itself. When her mother passes away, and the divine power of the moon god flows in her veins, vengeance shall be the only meaningful pursuit in her life. Do not take it as gospel. 1. Xia Qingyu's second request killed Yue Wuya's laughter. Don't tell her! Yue Wugu blurted out in panic before Yue Wuya could even say anything. Yue Wuya shot the love of his life a consoling look before turning back to Xia Qingyu. I can answer your question, but not now. Why? Xia Qingyu asked. Yue Wuya countered with his own question. I love Wugu more than I love myself. What do you think I would have done the instant I figured out the mastermind's identity? Xia Qingyu. I would have sought out that bitch and torn her to pieces with my own bare hands. Yue Wuya's voice remained calm, but the latter half of the sentence was said with a slight gnashing of teeth. Or at least I wish in reality I have not claimed vengeance for Wugu even though it has been so many years. Why do you think that is? A long, stifling silence later, Xia Qingyu finally answered, Is it because the mastermind was someone even you cannot defeat, Senior? That is correct. Gravity entered both Yue Wuya's eyes and voice. The villain possesses an incredibly powerful background and backing. Her strength and status are among the best of the best, but she also possesses a cunning and ruthless mind. The words good, evil, right, and wrong don't exist in her dictionary, only interest does. Not only did she hurt your mother, she misled me into thinking that the star god realm was the primary suspect. I was overcome by fury and didn't investigate the matter as well as I should have. So I committed a grave mistake that worsened the deteriorating relationships between the moon god realm and star god realm even more exactly as the mastermind wanted. Yue Wuya clenched his fists soundlessly as he said this. The observer, Yun Qi, knew exactly what he was talking about. Yue Wuya had thought that Xing Jukang was behind the attack on Yue Wugu, so he retaliated by doing the same thing to the star god emperor. He had kidnapped what he thought was Xing Jukang's most cherished concubine, the mother of the heavenly wolf star god Zissou and Jasmine, and caused her to commit suicide. Yue Wuya died at Jasmine's hands later on, so one might say that Jasmine had gotten the vengeance she deserved. However, Kayana Yinger was really to be blamed for the tragedies behind both Xia Qingyu's family and Jasmine's family. She is someone even I cannot harm. What can you do even if you learn about her now? Yue Wuya said solemnly. Plus, your cultivation, your cunning, your experience, and your methods, there are several layers of heaven and earth between you and her. If I tell you her identity, you will have a clear but untouchable target. You will become full of hatred, but you will never be able to vent it. It will only destroy your focus, disrupt your cultivation, and set you back on your path of vengeance even more. Don't worry. I will naturally tell you the truth when you have inherited and adapted to my power. He looked at Xia Qingyu with deep expectation in his eyes. You are the bearer of the heart of snow-glazed glass and the 9 profound, exquisite body, so it is only a matter of time before you surpass her. Keep your head low, gather your strength, and one day you will be able to claim vengeance for all of us." Xia Qingyu didn't get the answer she wanted, but she nodded deeply and didn't ask further questions. At this point, Yun Qi was gradually realizing that Yue Wuya hadn't just passed down the purple pylon divine power to Xia Qingyu. There was also one thing that troubled him greatly. Why did Xia Qingyu and Yue Wuya's blood mingle perfectly? The timeline didn't match at all, and Yue Wugu herself had stated clearly that she and Yue Wuya hadn't slept together. Was it really just a mistake? Back then in another space. WH, what? You plan to pass down the throne to Xia Qingyu? God Emperor H, have you gone insane? Golden Moon God Yue Wuji was so anxious that he blurted out the offensive words before he could stop himself. "I have thought long and hard about this," Yue Wuya said. "Although the title of Moon God Empress will give her some of the prestige she needs, she will still face considerable resistance. I will need your aid, Wuji." Considerable resistance doesn't even begin to describe how hard it will be. Yue Wuji stepped in front of Yue Wuya with a look of utter puzzlement. "Xia Qingyu is the bearer of the heart of snow-glazed glass and the 9 profound, exquisite body. I have no objections to you choosing her as the successor of the purple pylon divine power whatsoever. But the throne of God Emperor, this I can neither understand nor accept." "What's so difficult to understand?" Yue Wuya countered. "The previous bearer of the heart of snow-glazed glass founded the eternal heaven realm itself. Moreover, it is said that the bearer will be protected by the heavens itself. The moon god realm's future may shine brighter than ever before." 1. Even if I were to believe that the future you described will come true, and that the bearer of the heart of snow-glazed glass will enjoy the protection of the heavens, Xia Qingyu is still an outsider. "An outsider?" Yue Wuji said harshly. "It is true that the king realm always comes first for a god emperor, but not even the most selfless god emperor would just surrender eons of history, and the king realm they've worked their whole life to improve to an outsider, would they?" That startled Yue Wuya into silence. "Moreover, Xia Qingyu is the daughter of Yue Wugu and another man." Yue Wuji couldn't stop shaking his head and frowning deeply. "It would have been perfectly normal for you to loathe her, much less consider passing the throne to her." For a long time, Yue Wuya couldn't say anything. Occasionally, bewilderment would flash across his eyes. It was because Yue Wuji's reasoning did make a lot of sense. No matter how talented Xia Qingyu was, to pass the throne to her was to put the future of the moon god realm in the hands of an outsider. Moreover, she was the daughter of Yue Wugu and another man. It would be perfectly natural for him to loathe her. So why did he still not feel like changing his mind? "Wuji," Yue Wuya let out a quiet sigh, "the heavenly mystery realm has prophesied that I will die in 5 years. Whether it will come true or not, I should be prepared for the worst, and in the short term she is the absolute best successor I could find. Anyway, I shall be preparing as much as possible for the announcement." He clapped Yue Wuji on the shoulder before continuing. "You will help me, right?" Yue Wuji was going to speak some more, but he saw the look in Yue Wuya's eyes and knew that it was futile. A long sigh and a helpless nod later, he said, "Officially, you are my god emperor. Unofficially, you are my brother. Of course, I would support your decisions no matter what they are, but that is all I need to hear." Yue Wuya smiled. "You may begin preparing for, well, everything. For the next period of time, I shall be guiding Qingyu's cultivation personally. I will need you to take care of the major and minor matters of the moon god realm during this time. I'm also going to invest all of the moon sea jades that are meant for Xuanj, and the glazed moon pity heart plum that we had prepared to nurture the next moon god emperor on Qingyu." Yue Wuji blanched. Knowing Xuanj, he will not sit by and do nothing. He will also be an unstable element to look out for when Qingyu inherits the throne in the future. You must prepare for that as well. Shockingly, Yue Wuya's determination to make Xia Qingyu the next moon god emperor had become even firmer after his argument with Yue Wuji. It was almost as if someone had infected him with a mind-controlling parasite. "I understand." Yue Wuji could only agree. The world changed again, but this time Yun Qi recognized the scene. It was the capital city of the moon god realm, the day of the divine moon in the sky. Xia Qingyu was meant to be made the moon god empress during this ceremony. It was also the place he and Xia Qingyu encountered each other once more. She had just stepped out of her prison, so that all of the attendees could memorize her name when suddenly she learned that the late husband she thought to be dead for years was alive, and that he was in the divine moon city right now. "Foster father, can King make one request?" she asked Yue Wuya while barely keeping her wild confusion and struggle under control. "Could foster father please bestow the vanishing moon celestial palace upon King Yu?" "Ha ha ha ha!" The moon god emperor let out a hearty laugh. "King Yu, in all the years you've been here, this is the first time you've requested something from me. Great, this is simply great. It won't be too long before the entire moon god realm belongs to you, much less something as trifling as the vanishing moon celestial palace. But since you want it, then I'll give it to you right now. I thank foster father for granting my request." Behind King Yu's gratitude was even greater struggle and guilt. "Foster father," she spoke so quietly that her voice was almost indiscernible, "King Yu has something to say. I beg that you remember this always. In the future, no matter what happens, King Yu will never ever let down the moon god realm." "King Yu, you—" Her sudden statement had puzzled Yue Wuya. "King Yu only wants foster father to forever remember those words. No matter what happens in the future, I beg that foster father remembers these words," she continued very, very softly. Yue Wuya remained puzzled, but he didn't press her since he had guests to attend to. He simply let out a happy chuckle and said, "King Yu, with these words of yours, even if that prophecy made by the heavenly mystery realm happens tomorrow, I no longer have any regrets." 2. When Yue Wuya left, and there was no one left in the vanishing moon celestial palace, King Yu's pain finally broke through her self-control and leaked onto her features. She closed her eyes and couldn't come to a decision for a very long time. Should I send him a sound transmission and tell him everything now, or— Hesitation colored her gaze and her features as she whispered to herself. She felt as if she was standing on a crossroads of no return. She recalled the choice her mother had to make back then. This one wasn't even close to being as difficult as her mother's choice or circumstances, but the pain was as raw as it was soul-wrenching. Her mind drifted back to the day she and Yunqi were wed. "You've made it clear that you will leave for Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace, and that the only reason you married me is to fulfill that promise. Therefore, you don't have problems with me taking a concubine, right? As you wish. You promised, but oh, you're not allowed to find another man, though. Yunqi may be a cripple, but I am still a man. You must promise me this as well. Unreasonable man. How is that unreasonable? A man's pride is bigger than the heavens, especially when a woman is involved. Also, you are my wife, but you won't allow me to touch you, and you're plotting to leave me. Can you really look me in the eye and tell me you've fulfilled even one of your wifely responsibilities? Also, what I'm asking of you is but the most basic tenet between husband and wife. Are you seriously not going to oblige even that? Yes, you're only doing this for a promise. Yes, you're only repaying a debt that is owed, but what are they worth if there isn't even a sliver of sincerity in your gestures? Fine. I promise I won't have an affair with another man, and that I won't do anything that will diminish your manly pride in any way. Are you satisfied now? HMPH. Now we're talking. Seriously, though, you are just too pretty for your own good. What am I to do if you see a reputable young master one day and fall to temptation? Hey, I haven't finished talking yet. The wedding is fake and the title is empty. However, what will it matter if the entire world believes it to be true? It is too unfair to him, King Yu whispered to herself as tears streaked down her cheeks. He is just starting to grow his fame in the god realm. How can I be the one to cast him into the shadows and destroy his future? Mother, foster father, King Yu is unfilial. I can only atone for the rest of my life. Every word King Yu whispered pierced Yunqi's heart. Back on the vanishing moon celestial palace, King Yu had explained everything to him in a cool and collected tone. He already knew then that King Yu had to make a painful decision before pulling the stunt she did. But it was only now that he truly understood just how hard and painful it really was. On one hand, it was her mother's final wish to be properly wed with Yue Wuya. She also owed Yue Wuya a huge favor, not to mention that there seemed to be some sort of strange blood relation between them. On the other hand, she promised him that she would remain faithful, and the wedding ceremony, even though it was fake, was going to hurt him deeply and throw his future into disarray. In the end, she had chosen him and buried that heavy, heavy guilt and regret deep inside her heart. She never let him carry even a shred of these burdens. The scene sped up. He saw himself and King Yu escaping the moon god realm on the vanishing moon celestial palace. Kai and Yinger intercepting them midway. Him being implanted with the Brahma soul death-wishing mark. Him begging for sweet release while she knelt in front of the forbidden land of samsara. After passing him to Shen Zai and returning to the moon god realm, Xia Qingyu knelt in front of Yue Wuya and awaited her punishment. However, instead of the explosive rage and punishment she expected, Yue Wuya simply let out a helpless chuckle and said, "Can't you at least try to ask for forgiveness or give me a shoulder rub or something, Qingyu? This stubbornness of yours is really nothing like your mother at all." At this point, it was clear that his affection, tolerance, and doting on Xia Qingyu went far beyond what anyone would expect from a foster father. Time passed. A year later, Yue Wuya's death prophecy came true. He had died in Jasmine's hands. He watched as the dying Yue Wuya fought to his last breath to transfer the purple pylon divine power to Xia Qingyu. Unfortunately, his death came so quickly that he wasn't able to pave the path he had prepared for Xia Qingyu to completion. When he died, he spoke to Xia Qingyu not about his hopes for her and his expectations about the future, but hate for Xia Hongyi. Yes, he had never walked out of it. In his final moments, he shed tears he never shed in front of Yue Wugu and passed away in hatred. No one who hadn't witnessed this with their own eyes could imagine that a moon god emperor's life would end in such a tragic manner. On the same day, Yue Wugu committed suicide in the name of love. Yunqi watched as Xia Qingyu held Yue Wugu's body and cried uncontrollably. The bronze mirror Yue Wugu had held to her chest became her memento of her mother. Bearing guilt and regret toward both her mother and her foster father, and facing massive resistance from the moon god realm itself, Xia Qingyu became completely alone in the god realm. Despite knowing that her decision would be rebuffed by everyone in the moon god realm, Xia Qingyu still buried her mother's body next to Yue Wuya's in the imperial tomb. She then knelt in front of the tomb for 3 days and nights. Yunqi watched every second of it without making a single noise or moving his gaze away even once. If only he could have stood by her side back then. He could have shouldered some of the pain in her heart at least. A long time later, Xia Qingyu finally rose to her feet. Suddenly, her body began spasming uncontrollably until she fell back to her knees. A tremor was shaking up her previously dead eyes into utter chaos as well. Although it was just a memory, Yunqi almost felt like the unnatural spasm of Xia Qingyu's soul was occurring in his as well. What on earth is happening to Qingyu? She clutched her head tightly with both hands. The shaking kept growing more and more violent, and she seemed to be enduring a massive amount of pain. What's going on? What's happening to her? Yunqi shouted inside his own soul sea. It was at this moment the transient woman's voice spoke up. She has inherited the purple pylon divine power perfectly, and in an unbelievably short amount of time, thanks to her 9 profound, exquisite body. Her mind has also been greatly shaken by all the tragedies that have struck her. As a result, her heart of snow-glazed glass began awakening rapidly as well. To have a heart like glazed glass is to be untainted by the filth of the world. She perceived the truth beneath nothingness much sooner than you did, and even sooner than I had predicted. The truth beneath the nothingness? Yunqi looked around in confusion. What does that mean? Since you began cultivating the world-defying heaven manual, you too have gradually perceived the truth, haven't you? The woman's voice answered. Me? Yunqi exclaimed in surprise. However, before he could ruminate on her words, the Xia Qingyu in the memory finally stopped shaking. She slowly raised her head. She should have expended every tear that existed in her body, but they flooded her cheeks again in no time at all. You really are my father. You really are my father. She could barely finish her sentence without sobbing in between. Her outburst also caused Yunqi to fall into long, deep shock. What on earth did she see? You really are my father, she said. It could only mean one thing. Was Yue Wuya actually her birth father? That perfect fusion between 2 bloods wasn't a coincidence after all. But Xia Hongyi and Yue Wugu only had Xia Qingyu in their 3rd year together. Yue Wugu herself practically swore to Xia Qingyu that she and Yue Wuya had never even slept together. This was all undeniable evidence. It was why Xia Qingyu couldn't be sure that Yue Wuya was her true father, even though her hand had passed through a barrier that was only passable by a direct descendant of Yue Wuya, and their blood had fused together. Were Yue Wugu and Xia Hongyi both lying? Or, no wonder, you allowed me to get close to you and depend on you like your own. No wonder, you doted on me and forgave me no matter what I did. I really was your daughter after all I have received, so much love from you, but I could not call you father while you were still alive, and I have spoiled even both you and Mom's final wishes. The tears were unending, and each word was uttered with blood. After Yunqi returned to the God realm and met up with Xia Qingyu once more, the latter had described Yue Wuya and Yue Wugu's death in a calm and indifferent manner. She didn't shed a single tear or show a shred of sorrow, nor did she mention that Yue Wuya was her true father. The tears, the sins, the pain, the regret, she had buried it all in her bosom. Suddenly, a terrible chill gripped Yun Qi's heart. He abruptly realized that the father, the mother, and the daughter, not a single one of them had died a good death. It was almost as if they had been cursed by cruel fate itself. The light turned dark and the winds grew shrill. It was as if the world itself was weeping for her sake. An indefinite amount of time later, Xia Qingyu's sobs finally slowed to a stop. When she raised her head to stare at the space in front of her, her eyes were completely blank. It took yet another indefinite amount of time before they finally regained their focus. It didn't stop there, however. Her eyes kept growing sharper and sharper until they resembled a pair of chilling knives. "Mother," she said quietly, "the mortal coil has only afforded you bitterness and sorrow. May that be a sign that your and father's stay in the afterlife is filled with infinite bliss. As for the hate and vengeance you left behind, I shall claim them in your place. Father, you weren't able to protect mother in this mortal coil. Be sure never to lose her again in the afterlife. As for the moon god realm you poured your heart and soul into to protect, I shall protect it in your place." She slowly raised her hand and pressed a fingertip to where her heart was. Then she declared in a voice as silent as the wind, "I, Xia Qingyu, hereby swear that I will spend the rest of my life fulfilling two wishes. The first is to kill Kaianai, and the second is to protect the moon god realm. If I fail to fulfill even one of these oaths, may the world smite me and samsara be forever denied to me." She stabbed the finger into her heart, drew out the blood, and engraved the blood oath onto her parents' tombstones. Yun Qi felt the stab on his own soul and couldn't stop shaking even a long time later. Xia Qingyu had sworn to kill Kaianai and protect the moon god realm. However, he had saved Kaianai from certain death, and he had destroyed the moon god realm with his own hands. Xia Qingyu literally had Kaianai Yinger's life in her clutches back then. But she had chosen to delay her vengeance by 1,000 years for his sake. The outcome of that choice was, in the real world, Yun Qi's body shook as if he was enduring a terrible snowstorm. Blood was dripping down his clenched teeth. No one could imagine the kind of mental torture he was enduring right now. Back in the Soul Sea, Xia Qingyu rose to her feet once more. When she turned around, her tears shattered like stars, and the purple needles in her pupils gleamed sharp enough to sever the soul. Despite his trembling and blurry vision, Yun Qi still saw a completely different Xia Qingyu from the one a moment ago. The transformation had been as immediate as it was absolute. In the next 3 years, the Moon God realm welcomed a new Moon God Emperor who wielded the Imperial Moon, Glazed Pearl, and the former God Emperor's will. But no one accepted. It would also bear witness to the new Moon God Emperor's meteoric rise and the results of her ruthlessness. 1. Qingyu accepted the Imperial Moon, Glazed Pearl from Yue Wuji and officially became the Moon God Emperor. Xia Qingyu had almost no supporters, and practically everyone in the entire Moon God realm rejected her. That was why her very first action as the Moon God Emperor stunned all of them. When the Moon God crowned prince, Yue Xuanj abruptly took action against her. She had chosen neither endurance, false civility, nor heroic resistance. Her choice was a purple light that smote the Moon God crowned prince in one strike. The crime of defying your God Emperor is death. What reason did she have to execute the Moon God crowned prince? That was it, and it applied to everyone. It had only been 9 days since Xia Qingyu inherited Yue Wuya's purple pylon divine power. However, the power she emanated already shook the moon gods to the core. Xia Qingyu's slash had cut away not just the head of the snake, but also Yue Wuji's hesitation. The moon god who was second in power only to the previous moon god emperor threw his full weight behind Xia Qingyu ever since. The moon god crown prince's sudden death meant that the anti-Xia Qingyu faction had lost their core before they even officially rose in revolt. After that, it was simply a matter of breaking them down one after another. She consolidated her strength at every step, and she never failed to hit the nail in the end. The other moon gods came to respect or fear her greatly, but the key thing was that they all submitted to her eventually, and their submission equaled the moon god realm's submission. It wasn't like that there were no voices of resistance at all, but what did they matter when none of the powers that mattered supported them? The civil strife of the moon god realm had ended in less than 2 years. It was an unimaginably short period that no one thought was possible until she did it. Kai Wao's ability to master the human heart and control any situation had come from tens of thousands of years of accumulated experience. However, Xia Qingyu hadn't been a leader for even a single day prior to her ascension. Although she had inherited the key memories of the previous moon god emperors when she accepted the imperial moon glazed pearl, and so knew the moon gods and moon god divine envoys like the back of her hand. The skills she displayed and the feats she had achieved were, to put it bluntly, impossible. Not even Kai Wao could have done better without using her Nirvana Devil Emperor soul. The awakening of the heart of snow-glazed glass, the truth she had perceived behind nothingness. What in the world had happened to her? What did she see? 3 years passed in the recollection of nothingness. It was around the time Yun Qi had returned to the God realm. As a result of Huo Poyun's betrayal, he was exposed the moment he returned to the Snow Song realm. Xia Qingyu did 2 things the moment she heard the news. First, she lured the eternal Heaven God Emperor to the Snow Song realm. Then she personally stopped Xianxia Yinger in her tracks. Things at the Snow Song realm had gone better than expected. But Zhou Zuzi would have saved Yun Qi even if Mu Xuanian hadn't been strong enough to cut off Luo Guxi's arm. Xianxia Yinger was by far the more dangerous element between the two, but Xia Qingyu had stopped her perfectly as well. The consequences would have been unimaginable if either one of his nemeses had managed to get their hands on him. But she had treated it like it was nothing when she had spoken to him about it. Some time later, they entered the Eternal Heaven God realm and participated in the Eternal Heaven General Assembly to discuss measures and actions to be taken against the Crimson Calamity. To Yun Qi's astonishment, Xia Qingyu was already wary of Long Bai then. Send down the order to investigate the family massacre that has been happening in the Dragon God realm recently, especially the time and location of the first incident. If possible, tell the men to do everything they can to search for energy traces at every crime scene. The more detailed the report, the better. Just send down the order to investigate this incident with whatever resources we have. Everything else can wait until we have a result. At the Eternal Heaven God realm, after their brief conversation, he saw her watching his departing back and letting out a long sigh. Countless priceless treasures, the Dragon Monarch's jealousy and Xianxia's venom, the entire universe may turn on him after the Crimson Calamity is over. What do I need to do to protect him? A breach appeared on the wall of primal chaos, and the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor returned. All of the God Emperors and Realm Kings were bending their knees and trembling in fear. Xia Qingyu had dropped to her knees as well, but that wasn't the only thing she did. She had hidden a hidden moon floating image pearl just above her purple sash and concealed its presence perfectly with her moon god divine aura. No one had a clue that she was engraving the scene of the God Emperors kneeling, and Yun Qi speaking to the Devil Emperor with the pearl. It was the scene in the first illusory glazed imagery jade. After Yun Qi returned to the Snow Song realm, he reported that the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor wouldn't be bringing a calamity upon the primal chaos. While the God Emperors and Realm Kings were showering Yun Qi with praise and calling him God-Child Messiah, Xia Qingyu was recording with another hidden moon floating image pearl. It was how the scene in the second illusory glazed imagery jade came to be. Next, Xia Qingyu drove Xianxia Fanchen into a corner via a clever mixture of truth and lies, and successfully turned Xianxia Yinger into Yun Qi's slave. On the same day, right after Yun Qi had left the Moon God realm, the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor had suddenly appeared before her. The heaven-smiting Devil Emperor had forcefully scoured Xia Qingyu's memories because she was curious about the woman who possessed both the heart of snow-glazed glass and the 9 profound exquisite body. Then she said something that stunned Yun Qi. Xia Qingyu, I have never seen such a sorrowful fate before in my entire life. Even I, who have experienced the calamity of being banished outside the primal chaos, feel grief for you. The most sorrowful part is that when you finally sensed it, you actually decided to comply with it. The light in Jai Yuan's devilish eyes turned even gloomier. Was it because you felt that you were simply unable to resist it? Or, do you really not understand, or is it that you don't wish to understand? But because of you, I know a secret that I should not have known, haha. This thing called fate is truly remarkable indeed. The heaven-smiting Devil Emperor had left the primal chaos. The Crimson Calamity was over, and Xia Qingyu had fallen into the abyss of nothingness. However, Yun Qi had no idea what the mysterious words the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor had said to Xia Qingyu meant. Not even a little. The heaven-smiting Devil Emperor then used the World Piercer to teleport Xia Qingyu away from the Moon God realm. The next thing she knew, they had appeared in a world of infinite gloom and darkness. The northern divine region. The heaven-smiting devil emperor watched the lightless cage in front of her and spoke in a sorrowful, angry, yet helpless voice. I had meant Meiyin no harm when I attended that meeting, but he set up a trap and expelled me and my clan out of the primal chaos. Despite this, I could find nothing but praise for the man in all the historical records I've seen. What a joke. If it wasn't for Xianxia, if I didn't care if Nixuan's name was tarnished because of me, Meiyin and Xiqi's power, will, and descendants, I would have gladly wiped out everything that was connected to the god race from this world forever. It was the scene in the fourth illusory glazed imagery jade. It had recorded the heaven-smiting devil emperor's monologue. It was the parts that were left out from the recording that shook Xianxi's mind, however. Looks like it is time for me to leave, as reluctant as I am to do so. The heaven-smiting devil emperor said seemingly to herself. It is what both Nixuan and Xianxia desire, though I do wish that there was another way. Back then, the heaven-smiting devil emperor had only promised that she wouldn't bring harm to the world. She never actually said that she would leave the primal chaos. For the longest time, Xianxia thought that the heaven-smiting devil emperor had chosen to sacrifice herself after realizing the gradual destruction her mere presence caused across many realms, and for the sake of Honger and Yuer. He had no idea that the choice was made after meeting Xianxia. What on earth had she seen in Xianxia? Leave, Xianxia questioned. I don't understand what you're saying, Senior Devil Emperor. With your power, anywhere you go will automatically become your world. The heaven-smiting devil emperor clarified. I will be leaving the primal chaos permanently with my clansmen. This world no longer belongs to us, and even if it did, we would never be able to destroy it as long as she is still around. An odd smile appeared on the heaven-smiting devil emperor's features. To think that she still exists in this world. What a... Unable to find a word to continue her sentence, the heaven-smiting devil emperor ended it with the shake of her head before moving on. I should have known the moment Xianxia used both light profound energy and dark profound energy at the same time. But then again, I still wouldn't have guessed that possibility even if I had another million heads. After all, who would have thought that the most impossible possibility would be the truth? Xianxia didn't ask who the heaven-smiting devil emperor was speaking of was. She watched the devil emperor's scarred face and asked, Senior Devil Emperor's benevolence will be remembered for eternity. However, if you don't mind, I have one shameful request to make. Oh, when you speak to the world of your departure, I hope, you can tell them that your decision was spurred by Xianxia's efforts. Xianxia. The heaven-smiting devil emperor watched her for a long time before breaking into a smile of mixed emotions. I would have done so even if you hadn't asked me. The rather well-hidden profound imagery stone you're carrying on your person is for his sake, isn't it? It is very interesting that the interference that has been applied to you doesn't involve your emotions. Very interesting indeed. It is a true shame that I don't have nearly enough time left. I really would have liked to witness your ending with my own eyes. Thank you for humoring me, Senior Devil Emperor. Xianxia bowed slightly in thanks before asking a very strange question. Senior, is it possible for you to tell me what this interference on my person is? The heaven-smiting devil emperor continued to shoot her a very strange look. I won't tell you out of pity for you. In fact, the later you learn about this, the better, though it looks like you aren't far away from perceiving the whole truth. If you are truly unfortunate, it may even dawn upon you in 2 or 3 years. Xianxia, you are already in a state where you should have realized something even if you haven't yet perceived the whole truth. Or rather, you are intentionally shying away from it for fear that the truth will be cruel beyond your ability to accept. Xianxia's eyes trembled violently. A long time later, she asked in a quiet voice, In the past, I never believed in fate. Today, I want to know, is it possible to defy this kind of fate? Before that, you must ask yourself this. Do you wish to defy it? The heaven-smiting devil emperor countered. Xianxia didn't answer. I am unable to answer your question, the heaven-smiting devil emperor continued. As for your question to me, you may answer it after you've perceived the whole truth. I very much look forward to your choice. The heaven-smiting devil emperor looked up at the dim void above her. The world exists because of balance. Where there is existence, there is extinction. Where there is life, there is darkness. Just the same, fate has its own counterpart. Xianxia looked puzzled. It was at this moment the heaven-smiting devil emperor extended her hand toward Xianxia. The world piercer and a pitch-black slab slowly floated toward her. Senior, Xianxia exclaimed in astonishment. She didn't stretch out her hands to receive the items. The world piercer was Nai Xuan's artifact. When we confirmed our love, he gave me the world piercer, and I gave him the sky poison pearl. The heaven-smiting devil emperor's voice turned soft. It is how me and my clansmen were able to survive outside of the primal chaos for time immemorial. It is the reason I managed to keep my sanity for several million years. If love is a fortune, then it is unchanging until one's end. If love is a wound, then the soul will hurt for 10 lifetimes. If love is a tribulation, then not even gods or Buddhas may survive it. You have witnessed my choice, Xianxia. Let my world piercer be the witness to your final choice. I was going to give Xianxia this world-defying heaven manual, but after you, I've decided to change my mind. He can perceive the whole truth after you've made your choice. There was a red flash, and both the heaven-smiting devil emperor and Xianxia vanished. Xianxia could only stare at the infinite darkness in front of him, feeling just as lost. Emperor, the first place she teleported to was the Dragon God realm. The forbidden land of Samsara was sealed off by a barrier that had been set up by the dragon monarch himself, but Xianxia never even made contact with it since she was using the world piercer. At the time, the forbidden land of Samsara had already become a wilted garden that had lost all of its holy light. She soundlessly stepped toward the small residence where Xianxia used to live. It was impossible to miss. It was the only place with lush, brightly colored flowers. At the center of the flower bush was a pool of blood. It had been many years since the blood was spilled, but it was still wet and shimmering with a bit of light, profound energy. It wasn't my misperception or delusion after all, she whispered to herself. Long Bai's hatred toward him far exceeded even the worst-case scenario I had envisioned. If the heaven-smiting devil emperor hadn't returned to the primal chaos, he might already have. She closed her eyes for a moment to steady herself. Icy fear lurked inside her heart. That's right. If it wasn't for the Crimson Calamity, Long Bai would have killed Xianxia already. At the time, no one had possessed the power to stop him. Thankfully, he has the evil infant to protect him now. It was her biggest consolation. The evil infant was without a doubt Xianxia's greatest talisman besides Xianxia. She slowly scanned the wilted garden with her spiritual perception. Immediately, her eyes locked onto a pile of shattered bamboo. It was the bamboo house where Xianxia used to live, and where she and Xianxia had become one. It was nothing more than a ruin now. Xianxia walked over to it and made a tapping motion with her finger. An intact piece of bamboo flew out of the pile and into Xianxia's hands. Engraved to its surface was a poem with exquisite handwriting. He, a strange cloud, meets a bright smoke, and saw the light she, the first light of dawn, chases away the wind of chaos, and nurtures the strange cloud together. They slumber atop a bed of flowers as one. Surprise crossed Xianxia's features. It was the poem he had recited thoughtlessly after he slept with Xianxia for the first time. Xianxia had glossed it over with a seemingly casual smile at the time, so he didn't think that she would engrave it onto a piece of bamboo. It had most likely happened after he left the forbidden land of Samsara. Was it her way of remembering him? He hadn't found this piece of bamboo when he and Xianxia entered the forbidden land of Samsara. What they found were two other deeply buried pieces of bamboo. One of them had the word Zai engraved into it, and the other was Yun. Xianxia stared at the bamboo piece for a very long time. Then she stored it instead of putting it back where it was. Xianxia. Xianxia didn't linger for too long. She turned away and was about to teleport away when suddenly the crimson divine light of the world piercer faded, and she turned her gaze on Xianxia's blood. She raised her hand and made a clenching motion. A ray of purple light lifted a dozen or so blood beads into the air before they all vanished into her palm. On the surface, the blood pool looked the same as before, except it was drier. "I pray that I will never have to use this," she whispered before truly vanishing from the forbidden land of Samsara. She didn't leave a single trace behind. In the lower realm space to the south of the southern divine region, Xianxia floated in space while watching a small planet that shone a dreamy blue light. A planet that's mostly made up of water and with a similar appearance, aura, and even spatial environment to the blue pole star. She whispered its name, the Sky-Water Star. It is a good enough choice. She closed her eyes before continuing in a dry voice. Though the purpose you were chosen for is most cruel and unfair. I hope that I am just worrying too much. After the heaven-smiting devil emperor left and everything went to hell, Xianxia saw Xianxia searching for him like crazy after he was teleported away by the void illusion stone. As soon as she was out of everyone's perception, She immediately teleported away to a star region and scanned the entire space for him. She repeated this at least dozens of times until finally, she reined in her impulse to continue with everything she had. It was because she needed to save the world piercer's spatial divine power for something even more important than searching for him. She teleported to the east of the eastern divine region and arrived at her homeworld, the blue pole star. The purple light in her eyes grew so bright that her pupils looked like dark jadeite. Power circulated throughout her entire body. She poured it all into the world piercer in her hand. Spirit of the world piercer, please awaken. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 10 breaths. Finally, the world piercer let out a shrill sound that almost sounded like a person's cry, and the crimson light that represented the greatest spatial divine power in the current universe enveloped the entire blue pole star. At the same time, a spatial passage that crossed nearly half of the primal chaos began to open slowly. On the other side of the spatial passage was where the southern space of the southern divine region and the sky-water star were. However, when the crimson light fully enveloped the blue pole star, the world piercer's cry suddenly grew weaker and strained, and the heavenly profound treasure itself shook violently in Xianxia's hands. Meiyin once told Xianxia that awakening the world piercer's spirit from its slumber with the power of the primordial universe, then forcing it to use the world piercer's spatial divine energy would damage it greatly, especially since it was much weakened in the first place. Even then, switching 2 planets across a distance that spanned nearly half of the primal chaos was still an almost impossible task. In Meiyin's words, it might be a miracle that could never be replicated again. Now that Xianxia was witnessing the scene with his own eyes, he realized that the price of the miracle wasn't just the heavy damage sustained by the world piercer spirit. Not even close. The world piercer spirit's cry kept growing shriller until it became utterly soul-wrenching. If this planetary teleportation were to fail here, it would never be able to perform it a second time. Steeling herself, Xianxia spat out a mouthful of blood right on the world piercer. At the same time, countless purple rays shone from her body as if she might explode there and then. It was so bright that it even pierced the world piercer's crimson glow for an instant. That was the purple flash Wuxin had captured with the eternal imagery Estone. Although the terrific purple flash had only lasted for an instant, the world piercer's spatial divine power did grow much greater all of a sudden. At the same time, Xianxia's aura deflated to almost nothing. The star region shook, and the crimson light quickly faded into nothing. However, the watery blue planet in front of her was no longer the blue pole star. In the distance, the sky-water star looked extremely similar to the blue pole star. In fact, Xianxia herself had to confirm multiple times that she hadn't failed the planetary teleportation after all. Then the price of the planetary teleportation caught up with her. Her complexion turned deathly pale, and her body became so weak that she wasn't even able to withstand the spatial storm blowing her way. She wobbled unsteadily as blood quickly dyed over half of her purple robes red. As the purple light in her pupils faded into almost nothing, she let out a weak whisper. "This is an unforgivable sin. I can only spend the rest of my life repaying it with him." Unable to hold on any longer, the world piercer flashed a weak red and took her back to the moon god realm. Bang! She dropped heavily to her knees the second she returned to her bedroom. Her purple robes had become fully drenched in blood at this point, and not a trace of its true colors could be seen anywhere. She panted for a long time before she struggled back to her feet. Then, she activated a purple-colored profound formation beneath her feet and bathed herself entirely in purple light. It was something she had prepared a long time ago. However, she didn't even get to recuperate for 20 hours before she was disturbed once more. It was Lion Yue approaching her at high speed, and she had ordered her not to disturb her unless she had new news regarding Xianxia. Her blood-drenched clothes shattered into pieces inside the profound formation, revealing her flawless skin for an instant before it was replaced by a new set of purple robes. Lion Yue then reported that the eternal heaven god emperor and the dragon monarch were traveling to the blue pole star together. She opened her eyes. The purple gleam in her pupils had come back to life. As the profound formation faded and she rose to her feet, she ordered, "Summon Yue Wuji to me now. Tell him that we will be departing immediately." Disaster had struck much too early. She used the vestiges of purple pylon divine power she just regenerated to hold her body together. Right now, the worst thing she could do was to reveal her weakness. Yunqi had no idea that Xia Qingyu was this weakened when he met her again outside the Blue Pole Star. After that, the Blue Pole Star was destroyed, and Xunian perished in battle. Yunqi had once again escaped in a manner that didn't fall into her plans, but she no longer had the strength to search for him like she did before. She had no choice but to return to the moon god realm. I need to be in seclusion for a while. Before I come out of seclusion, all matters, big or small, will be decided by Yao Yue and Wuji. Unless the matter is of grave importance, you must not disturb me. Yes, Jin Yue responded as obediently as ever. As Jin Yue watched Xia Qingyu's departing figure, she became absent-minded for a long while. She did not know if it was just a misperception, but she sensed that Xia Qingyu seemed to be extremely exhausted. So exhausted that even she could hide it no longer. The scene changed again. In seclusion, Xia Qingyu woke up from her dreams with tear stains streaked across her face. "No, it can't be real. It can't be real." She sobbed while pressing a palm to her forehand. Yunqi almost couldn't believe how tormented she sounded. What on earth? Did she dream? It's just a dream. She told herself this after she wiped away her tears. However, the dreams didn't end there. They happened again, and again, and again. Each time, she would dream the same dream. Each time, her dream grew clearer and clearer. Her anxiety growing to unmanageable levels, Xia Qingyu ended her seclusion prematurely despite not having fully recovered her profound energy or her internal injuries. She was greeted by the sight of Jin Yue after she stepped out of the barrier. Her faithful attendant had been guarding outside the whole time. She was asking Jin Yue about the latest happenings when Jin Yue suddenly let out a surprised cry. "Master, your mirror is cracked." She looked down. A long, thin crack had appeared on the bronze mirror Yue Wugu had left behind. For a long time, she simply stared at the bronze mirror without doing anything. Finally, she held it in her palm, opened it, and felt as if a lightning bolt had struck her. Her entire body turned stiff, and her pupils contracted visibly. Once upon a time, the bronze mirror had contained the profound images of 4 people. They were Xia Hongyi, Yue Wugu, the young Xia Qingyu, and young Xia Yuanba. However, there were only 3 people left in the bronze mirror. Her young self was conspicuously missing. Coincidentally, the long, thin crack had passed through the location where her profound image should be. It was a merciless reflection of the cruel dream she had refused to believe. Wisps of purple light surged around her hand as she slowly tightened her grip. She wanted to destroy the bronze mirror then, but she ultimately couldn't bring herself to do such a thing. In the end, she let out a long sigh and said, "Jin Yue." She folded the bronze mirror shut and tossed it into the hands of a surprised Jin Yue. "Please destroy it for me." She was far away by the time she finished her words. It was as if she couldn't bear to watch it be destroyed. "Ah!" Jin Yue caught the mirror, but Xia Qingyu was already gone. For a long time, the woman looked completely lost. When the line between dream and reality had disappeared, Xia Qingyu could fool herself no longer. There was only the lonely wind to accompany her as she knelt in front of Yue Wuya and Yue Wugu's grave. "It was me, I was the one who killed you." Again and again, she mumbled things that no one except her could truly understand. The world exists because of balance. Where there is life, there is destruction. Where there is life, there is darkness. Just the same, fate has its own counterpart. She whispered what the heaven-smiting devil emperor had said to her back then. "That was the answer to my question after all." "No wonder. You said that my fate was the most sorrowful you had ever seen." Tears dripped onto her palms as she held her hands before herself. "I never thought I would come to loathe my own existence so much. When I damned the Sky Water Star to save the Blue Pole Star, I thought that I no longer deserved to live like a human, but to think that I actually am less than a human, I'm just a tool, a wish, a medium." "Heh, he," she was chuckling, but it was more painful and terrible to look at than when she was crying her heart out. "Tool, wish, medium?" Yunqi watched and listened blankly. What is she talking about? 1533-2, 1581. There was a small flash on her tear-stained palms, and the world piercer appeared. She slowly raised it as the heaven-smiting devil emperor's parting words to her before she left the primal chaos rang inside her mind. "You have witnessed my choice, Xia Qingyu. Let my world piercer be the witness to your final choice." She knelt there for an entire day and night. When the howls of the wind quieted and took away the terrible chill covering her whole body, she rose back to her feet once more. The tears, the grief, the sorrow, everything had been buried back into her soul once more. She spoke as she faced the world piercer. "I have made my choice, Senior. I have already let down my parents, my sect, Yuanba. I cannot let him down as well, especially since he and I were husband and wife. If nothing else, he will be the one person in this world that I can face with a clear conscience. However, I'm obeying not the fate I've been subjected to, but my own wishes." The world piercer vanished from her hands. She had just gone through the biggest collapse of her life, and yet her eyes now shone with unprecedented clarity and determination. "When the ending approaches, I will naturally defy fate in my own way. Before that, though," the world piercer vanished, and she turned her gaze toward the north. Her deep purple pupils reflected the distant blue sky. "I loathe this lamentable fate, but I can't reject that sorrowful wish. Xianxia, you are now in the northern divine region, and you no longer have any weaknesses or attachments. All you have left is the hatred that will drive you to grow faster than ever before. Until you return, I shall pave the path for you little by little. All I hope is that you will stand at the pinnacle of this world when you return. Take back everything that is yours, and be so strong that no one can ever hurt you or destroy you anymore. If nothing else, it will make the end I am soon to meet worth something." The moon god realm looked like it had entered a period of hibernation after that, but it was really the complete opposite. The eternal heaven realm was doing everything in their power to search for Xianxia, and it looked like the moon god realm was doing the same thing. At the very least, the frequency of people going to and from the moon god realm had increased drastically. However, their task wasn't to find Xianxia, but to gather intel. The secrets of the moon god realm weren't the only things Xianxia had inherited from the core memories of the past moon god emperors. She also inherited all of the intel they had gathered on the other realms. The fact the moon god realm knew about the Brahma monarch realm's hiding of the primordial seal of life and death showed just how powerful their intel-gathering power really was. Normally, these secrets were used to intimidate or control a target during a time of necessity, and only then. Yue Wuya himself barely used any of them during his time as the moon god emperor. However, Xianxia utilized all of them to bury many hidden mines across the entire eastern divine region. After discovering that the glazed light realm was the one who hid Xianxia, she had exposed the truth of her own accord, dealt a harsh punishment to Shui Qianheng, and took Shui Meiyin away. At the bottom of the moon prison, she showed Shui Meiyin the world piercer and explained everything. Then, she made Shui Meiyin promise her two things. One, she wanted her to become the world piercer's new master by gradually building up affinity through her divine, stainless soul. Two, she wanted her to claim everything she had done for Xianxia as her own. "Meiyin, death is my best choice and ending. My view on everything can change except this one thing. I want him to hate me forever. That way he won't grieve over my death or suffer a hole in his soul. I'm sure you don't want to see that happen either, do you? You don't need to be sad for me. If nothing else, I have you to remember everything I did, to keep him company, and to enjoy his truest, best self in my place." After Xianxia killed the Eternal Heaven Guardians and turned Zhou Qingchen into a devil at the god realm of Absolute Beginning, Xianxia had visited the place to investigate the traces he left behind. However, she didn't leave immediately after she was finished. Instead, she flew to the abyss of nothingness and stood at the edge for a very long time. Right before she left, a small smile crossed her lips. It was because she had found her best resting place. It was the day of Yun Wuxin's 18th birthday, and the day Xianxia and Kai Weiao met with Zhou Zuzi and Zhou Qingchen. A great distance away, Xianxia watched as Xianxia brutally murdering Zhou Qingchen right before Zhou Zuzi's eyes. His savage grin and his hateful roars were expressions she had never seen on Xianxia before. In the end, Zhou Zuzi departed in hate, and Xianxia in blood and unconsciousness. Right after that, Kai Weiao's consciousness brushed against her. Without hesitation, she teleported back to the moon god realm with the world piercer and whispered to herself, "It looks like the legendary devil queen of the northern divine region's infamy is well deserved. I should not need to worry overly much with her around." Time moved forward again. The entire northern divine region was shaking on the day Xianxia was crowned the devil master, leader of the devil race and a power above even their king realms. Xianxia had teleported there to witness the scene with her own eyes. The dark barrier of the soul-stealing sacred region couldn't stop the spatial divine power of the world piercer as a matter of course. From a great distance away, she took in the pitch-black robes engraved with dark red devilish patterns, the long, dark hair that danced demonically with the wind, the devilish light of the heaven-smiting devil emperor's eternal calamity of darkness, and the pair of black abysses capable of instantly devouring one's soul on his face. The three king realms bowed their heads, and the dark, profound practitioners worshipped him as their god. He had become the unparalleled king of the northern divine region in just 3 years. This is what you should have been, Xianxia. Her smile was faint yet beautiful. The massive risk undertaken to witness this moment was worth it after all. She couldn't stay for too long because the dark, profound energy in the environment was continuously eroding her own. Finally, she turned away and said, "I look forward to the day of your return." Without this recollection, Xianxia would never have known that she had purposely teleported to the northern divine region to witness the moment he became the devil master of the northern divine region. "Master, our spies in the western divine region have reported confirmation regarding the suspicions you have of the dragon god realm." Lion Yue reported her findings to Xianxia. "Give me the specifics." "There has been an undertaking to search for light profound energy over the past few years. Officially, the Dragon God realm is looking for someone with an affinity for light profound energy so that the Dragon Queen may raise them as a successor. The real reason for the undertaking is unknown, however. It has been several years since the undertaking began." A short silence later, Xianxia instructed, "Tell the spies investigating this matter to cease operation and shift their focus to the Dragon God's movements instead." "Yes, Your Majesty." After Lion Yue left, Xianxia whispered to herself, "It looks like Xianxia may very well be still alive, and Long Bai doesn't know where she went." There was only one spot of destruction in the forbidden land of Samsara. No matter how powerful Long Bai was, it was impossible for him to have killed Xianxia in one hit. Her spies' reports greatly supported the theory that Xianxia was still alive as well. Time passed again, and they approached the 4th year since Xianxia entered the northern divine region. It was also around this time the curtains of war were drawn. Many overt or covert efforts to build momentum for the war were made before the fateful day. While the eternal heaven realm was announcing the crowning of a new crowned prince, a dark cloud of fury had gathered atop the sky of the northern divine region. They accused the eternal heaven realm of destroying the star realms of the northern divine region with the void cauldron. "It's all moving so fast," Xianxia whispered while staring at the dark clouds to the north. The day was coming far, far sooner than she had predicted. "You have experienced true hell itself. Neither you nor the Devil Queen will allow you to fail. I shall believe that this is not a step made in haste and thoughtlessness one, and pave the first step of your path for you." In the God realm of absolute beginning, Xianxia dripped a drop of Xianxia's blood onto a patch of grayish land. Not far away, the azure dragon god was moving in this direction. The blood slowly faded into the ground, but the weak light profound energy remained. She teleported to another space with the world piercer and repeated the motion. This time, though, she took out the bamboo piece she had retrieved from the forbidden land of Samsara, picked up a rock, and engraved the character, Zai, lightly on the ground. She made sure that her handwriting looked as close to the real thing as possible. After the deed was done, she teleported to yet another space. She teleported 15 times across the God realm of absolute beginning and dripped a total of 16 drops of blood on the ground. She had measured the distance just so that Long Bai would take some time to search for the next drop of blood, but not so long that he would give up and abandon his search. On the final site, she engraved a short message stating that she would return in a couple of months. It didn't take a smart person to figure out that this whole setup was a distraction of sorts, but Xianxia was certain that Long Bai would fall for it anyway. Considering his twisted obsession with Xianxia, he could be 99% certain that this was a distraction, and he still wouldn't let go of that 1% possibility. That was all she and Xianxia needed. After confirming that the Azure Dragon God had discovered the first wisp of light profound energy and left in a hurry with her own eyes, Xianxia finally disappeared from the God realm of absolute beginning, the southern divine region, at one of Nan Wansheng's palaces to the west of the southern sea God realm. Xianxia watched as a girl even she almost couldn't detect deposited a soul crystal into the clothes of one of Nan Wansheng's personal maids. The soul crystal contained a message that basically claimed that the Brahma monarch realm was hiding the primordial seal of life and death. Heh heh heh. To think that they actually want to use me to block a spear heading their way, however, I will definitely let them use me. After all, who can resist the allure of eternal life? Ha 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 ha, the hidden girl left amidst the mad cackle. Xianxia herself had departed the place. Is she the rumored 7th witch Hua Jin? She too deserves her infamy, Xianxia whispered to herself. I guess I don't need to do anything here. Her ability to conceal her presence is practically unparalleled in this world, but she's still a dark, profound practitioner. Normally, she would be leaking dark, profound energy quite obviously. Is this the power of the eternal calamity of darkness Senior Devil Emperor spoke of? It looks like the core powers of the Northern Divine Region have all undergone a massive change thanks to him. The Eastern Divine Region will never see this coming, and this method can only come from Kyanai. A complicated look flashed across her features before she disappeared once more. On cue, she began detonating the hidden mines she had buried long ago. Show this blood-drenched sword to the Bright Heart Realm King, and he will know that the murderer of his youngest son is the outstanding Sun Realm King. Give this soul crystal to Luo Changsheng, and that to Luo Shangchen. Do not leave any trace behind. The shame of the Divine Martial Realm King Wu Sanzan is engraved in this. Use it to make him close his realm for 3 months. Remind him that we will destroy his reputation if anyone so much as takes a step out of the Divine Martial Realm during this time. Take these 7 poison ivy of absolute beginning and scatter them across the 7 seas of the 9 brilliance realm. The ensuing turmoil should keep them busy for a time. The darkness' very first step of their invasion was to trample the Eastern Divine Region. It had been an unbelievably smooth step because the greatest threat, the upper star realms, had been unnaturally silent. Not all of them were motionless, but it was definitely enough to swing the tides of war in the devil people's favor. When they had massacred the eternal heaven realm, not a single one of the neighboring upper star realms had come to their rescue either. Yes, it was the result of Kai Weiao and Yun Kaiying's many efforts. However, neither of them knew that there was a third, invisible force working with them all this time. It was the main reason why their invasion had progressed impossibly smoothly, and their losses had been kept to a nigh impossible minimum. Even the biggest and most unpredictable element of them all, long by, had been lured away to the God realm of absolute beginning. The absence of their leader was the main reason why the Dragon God realm, no, the entire Western Divine Region had chosen to do nothing even when both the Eastern Divine Region and the Southern Divine Region had fallen. When the invasion finally began, the entire north side of the Eastern Divine Region became drenched in chaos and blood. Xia Qingyu returned to the Moon Prison once more, but it would be the last time she met Shui Meiyin. Sister Qingyu. Shui Meiyin walked up to her with trembling eyes. She must have felt something already. Xia Qingyu summoned both the World Piercer and the slab engraved with the World-Defying Heaven manual into existence. Then she pushed them gently into Shui Meiyin's hands. Starting now, you are the new and only master of the World Piercer. Please pass him this incomplete piece of the World-Defying Heaven manual as well. Shui Meiyin obediently received them before asking, "Is Big Brother Yun Qi coming?" Xia Qingyu replied, "The war happening in the north seems huge, but it's lasted just a tad too long. It's clearly a distraction for their core strength to penetrate the south without being detected. His powers have transformed dark, profound practitioners so that they're no longer leaking dark, profound energy at every moment. But the profound practitioners of the Eastern Divine Region still know nothing about it. This gap in intel is all the Northern Divine Region needs to deal a grievous blow to the Eastern Divine Region. The moment is very near. That is why you should leave now." Understood. However, Shui Meiyin didn't teleport away immediately. She watched Xia Qingyu with her lips parting and closing as if she wanted to say something, but didn't know how to start. Xia Qingyu shook her head smilingly. "Don't try to change my mind. If anything, you should be happy that I will finally be free from my bindings." But, Shui Meiyin's hands shook uncontrollably. "Give him the 4 illusory glazed imagery jades when the time is right, preferably after they occupy the Eternal Heaven realm. The Eternal Heaven projection is the perfect tool to publicize the truths inside them. They will destroy the Eastern Divine Region's fighting spirit and morale, and shake up the Western Divine Region and Southern Divine Region as well. After you leave, I will spread the news that you've escaped in full force. Then everything will be perfect." Tears slowly slid down Shui Meiyin's cheeks, but the girl could only nod her head slowly and firmly. "It will be done. As for everyone in the Moon God realm, please continue watching over them after I'm gone," Xia Qingyu continued smilingly. "I have already sent away all of the core powers of the Moon God realm. Yue Wuji will eventually guide them to that space where no one can detect them. I will surrender the Moon God realm perfectly to him. There won't be any death or destruction since no one will attempt to resist. Adding that to my death, Nothing overtly terrible should happen to the moon god realm. When decades, centuries have passed by, and he stands at the pinnacle with all of his hatred spent, please persuade him to return the moon god realm to Yue Wuji. Show him that you're the one who saved the blue pole star and everything, and he will naturally accept any request you make of him. Well, you don't have to do this exactly as I tell you. I'm sure that someone as intelligent as you will come up with a better way than me to explain things, a better method that will lead to a better outcome. Meiyin stared into Xia Qingyu's eyes and responded with the utmost gravity. Don't worry, Sister Qingyu. I'll definitely fulfill our promise. She failed, however. It was because Yun Qi had given neither her nor the moon god realm even the tiniest chance to salvage things. After Meiyin left, and her escape was discovered, Xia Qingyu had chased away Jin Yue for letting Meiyin go on purpose. In a fit of fake anger, dispatched Lion Yue to search the nearby star realms, and sent Yao Yue to the glazed light realm. The moon gods and moon god divine envoys were kicked out one after another as well. To an outsider, it was as if she had completely lost her mind. When everything was done, she returned to her bedroom quietly. Things went exactly as she had predicted. The dark, profound practitioners who had slipped to the south side of the Etern divine region without being noticed soon bared their fangs and ambushed countless unsuspecting star realms. As for the eternal heaven god realm, right after Zhou Zhuzi had teleported the resistance force he just mustered to the north side of the eastern divine region, the great dimensional formation was destroyed, and a terrible figure cast his terrifying shadow onto its soil. That marked the true beginning of the devilish calamity. The entire eastern divine region became caught up in great chaos. Meanwhile, Yue Wuji was making his way to Xia Qingyu's bedroom. It was utter chaos outside, but for some reason the moon god emperor was doing nothing at all. Too anxious to even salute his god emperor, Yue Wuji blurted the moment he barged through the door. God emperor, countless eastern divine region star realms, including the eternal heaven realm itself, are being ravaged by the devils right now. We need to summon all of the moon gods and moon god divine envoys back to us and head to their rescue right now. Even if we're not saving the eternal heaven realm, we still need everyone to defend our realm. The devil people have clearly plotted this for a long time, and their prowess exceeds every expectation. They may very well invade us at any moment. He was already confused by Xia Qingyu's unusually big fuss at Meiyin's escape earlier, but her inaction toward this inferno at her doorsteps confused him even more. He was absolutely brimming with anxiety right now. Wuji! In sharp contrast to the golden moon god's panic, Xia Qingyu's voice remained as cool and lonely as a cold moon. I have something to give you. Yue Wuji was about to ask what it was when moonlight of infinite purity pricked his pupils and shocked him to silence. It was because Xia Qingyu was holding the artifact of inheritance and the heart of the moon god realm, the imperial moon glazed pearl. Yue Wuji, Xia Qingyu said slowly, starting now you are the new god emperor of the moon god realm. Yue Wuji's knees buckled visibly. He had been one weakness away from dropping to his knees. Still in utter shock, he took a step backward and blurted, God Emperor, what are you saying? This is not a joke. Xia Qingyu pushed the imperial moon glazed pearl to Yue Wuji while gathering a soul imprint at her fingertip. Then she shot it into his forehead. The soul imprint contained the location and information of a distant lower realm space. After you have received the imperial moon glazed pearl, you will immediately send a sound transmission to the moon gods and divine envoys and guide them to this space. You will travel in the fastest and stealthiest method possible. No one is to take a single step out of the space after everyone has entered it. Don't worry. When the time is right, someone will meet up with you and take you back to the outside world. At this point, Xia Qingyu's meaning became absolutely clear. Unable to accept his god emperor's decision, Yue Wuji shook his head and asked for clarification. Forgive me for saying this, but are you telling us to abandon our realm? That is exactly correct. He got confirmation instead of the explanation he wanted. There is no stopping the northern divine region since the moment they successfully ambushed the eastern divine region. We will lose, and the moon god realm will be trampled if we fight them head-on. Therefore, this is the only way to preserve the moon god realm. You are gravely mistaken, God Emperor, Yue Wuji replied strongly. The moon god realm has occupied a corner of the eastern divine region for hundreds of thousands of years. We have nothing to fear from the devil people. Even if their momentum is truly unstoppable, We are still honor-bound as moon gods and members of a king realm to become the vanguard that will challenge their might first. If we abandon our star realm without even putting up a fight, the moon gods are sure to become the laughingstocks of the entire primal chaos when the devil people are wiped out. Xianxia was completely unsurprised by Yue Wuji's outburst. She let out a soft sigh before replying, "Everything you said is correct, but I no longer have the time to give you a proper explanation. All I ask of you is to remember one thing." The purple light in her pupils shone through Yue Wuji's pupils and into his soul. "I owe the late moon god emperor a great favor that may not be repaid with 10,000 deaths. I have even sworn a vicious oath to protect the moon god realm right in front of his grave. I will never betray the moon god realm. I know this escape seems utterly shameful, but trust me when I say that every other option is absolutely worse for the moon god realm." Yue Wuji wanted to speak more, but forget questioning the validity of her statement. He couldn't even form words at the look in Xianxia's eyes. There was one thing he was absolutely certain of, though. Xianxia would never betray the moon god realm. This dark calamity is far crueler than you can possibly imagine. Even now, it has already become impossible to predict the fates of the king realms of the Eastern Divine region. I am sure you will understand my meaning in the very near future. But for now, she watched him with both a god emperor's authority and a deep pleading. "You haven't accepted the imperial moon glazed pearl yet, so I am still your god emperor. As my subject, you are not to disobey my orders. Moreover, once you've accepted the imperial moon glazed pearl, the future and especially the safety of the moon god's lineage will be in your hands. As the moon god emperor, you must protect the moon god's lineage at all costs. Understand?" A long silence later, Yue Wuji finally dropped to his knees and clasped his hands in front of him. "Wuji shall obey his god emperor's commands." When his trembling voice finished, he very slowly held the imperial moon glazed pearl in his hands. Xianxia turned away and whispered in a nigh imperceptible voice, "I leave everything to you, uncle." Yue Wuji abruptly looked up and locked his gaze onto her back. Her whisper had been so soft that he wasn't sure if he had imagined what she said. "Now go. There will be time for hesitation and delays later." Yue Wuji left as commanded. Starting now, Xianxia was no longer the moon god emperor. She was just Xianxia. She left her bedroom, floated above the divine moon city, and watched the live projection of the massacred eternal heaven realm in silence. She watched its blue skies being dyed red, its soil choking under heaps and heaps of bodies, the eternal heaven great ancestor being forced to show herself to defend her realm only to be killed in a humiliating manner, and more. She bore witness to the end of an eastern region king realm. The divine moon city was unusually silent tonight. The crescent moon in the sky was also so clear and bright that it painted the city in a beautiful silver sheen. For a time, it felt like the peaceful moment would never end until suddenly, coldness flooded her gaze. It was because she sensed Xianxinger's aura radiating from a nearby star realm. "They're here already. His hatred for me is so intense he can't wait even a moment longer." Moonlight enveloped her body, and the purple robes that made her the moon god emperor fell away. An instant later, they were replaced by a red dress. In that moment, the moon itself felt like a pale imitation of her beauty. "I cannot choose my beginning, but at least I can choose how my story ends." She opened her palm, and the purple pylon divine sword shone a deep purple. She raised her arm, but she stared not at her sword, but the red sleeves wrapped around her slender arm. For a moment, her red sleeves reflected in her purple eyes. After the dreams, she had come to realize that red was the very first color of her life. An item slowly slid down her sleeves, but she immediately caught it with her aura and moved it to her hand. It was a marriage contract, the very same one she had destroyed before his eyes. The wedding contract fell open on her hand. Blue wind, floating cloud, Xianxia, it was the same handwriting, the same pair of names. "Why are you real when everything else is fake?" Her fingers clenched tighter and tighter as she whispered. Suddenly, she folded the marriage contract and placed it back within her sash. Her eyes turned chilly, and a great power surged from her body. She then flew toward the star realm where Xianxinger's aura was emanating until her figure had shrunk completely into nothing. She saw Yun-Chi and got ready to burn her life force to kill Xianxinger. However, rumble, in that moment, Yun-Chi sealed off all of his senses. Once upon a time, the scene of the moon god realm crumbling into cosmic dust had made him laugh to the point of insanity. Today, he dared not even watch or listen to it. Is fate really that inexorable? The memory of her soulless whisper and colorless face rang in his soul sea. After everything he had seen from Xia Qingyu's recollection of nothingness, Yunqi dared not even imagine how she felt when the moon god realm she swore to protect crumbled to nothing right before her eyes. The recollection of nothingness finally ended. Everything that happened afterward was a memory they both shared. To re-experience them was a kind of torture beyond anything Yunqi could describe. In the real world, his body was twitching, his teeth were chattering, and his face was covered in tears. No matter how many times he clenched his teeth, the tears wouldn't stop flowing. "Do you regret learning everything?" His consciousness had returned to the real world before he knew it, but the transient voice still rang clearly in his mind. Genesis, Yunqi didn't reply. He couldn't. "You still have one chance. I can wipe away all these painful memories for you," she continued slowly. "You can choose to forget it all or to retain just your hatred and indifference toward her. That is what Xia Qingyu wants as well." The only answer she got was the tormented twitching of his body and the sound of his endless tears dripping against his clothes and the ground. "It hurts my heart, my soul, my beliefs. It feels like something is cutting them all into tiny pieces. The pain will not end high above the sky." 4 women were watching him silently with sorrowful, heavy, or complicated expressions on their faces. When he was curled up like a prawn, and every part of his body was convulsing in pain. But for whatever reason, he couldn't even squeeze out a howl to relieve even a little of the pain. They never imagined that they would see him like this after he became the great emperor of the universe. Yunqi had been sitting here for over 2 weeks already, but there wasn't a single moment where he wasn't twitching in pain. They didn't know what Yunqi was going through. They could only watch him in silence and accompany him this way. "Xia Qingyu," Kai Weiao let out a small sigh before looking at the sky. Her plans were pretty much perfect. What really exposed it all wasn't flaws in her plan or a twist of fate, but the deep-seated obsession Yunqi had pretended didn't exist until he finally found something that could validate it all. He never forgot about Xia Qingyu. He had always hoped that it was all fake. When the opportunity finally came by, he did everything in his power to prove it was true. He pretended to not care about what I told him back then, but the truth was the complete opposite. Meiyin was pressing her face against Mu Xuanian's shoulder and sobbing uncontrollably. Yunqi's painful appearance had hurt her just as much. The secret could no longer be kept, so she could only confess everything to them. Xianxia abruptly moved toward Yunqi. She had been silent and unmoving this whole time, but it looked like she couldn't keep herself still any longer. A hand immediately caught her wrist, however. "Do not disturb him." Mu Xuanian's low, cold voice rang behind her ears. Xianxia closed her eyes and pushed down her rising aura little by little. Turning away so she couldn't see Yunqi's tortured appearance any longer, she murmured seemingly to herself, "Why am I the one who lived?" Kai Weiao glanced at Xianxia before taking her hand into her own. It felt cold enough to chill her heart. "The fact that you are thinking this way proves that you are no longer that sinful Brahma monarch goddess you were. The past cannot be changed, but the future can." Xianxia. Kai Weiao continued while brushing her fingers gently against Xianxia's palm. "It may take an unimaginable amount of time and atonement, but as long as you keep living, you will find a way to forgive yourself one day. You were the one who supported him during the darkest moments of his life. Now and in the future, he cannot live without you either. Of this I am certain, and you should believe it as well." Xianxia lightly shook Kai Weiao's hand away, and she didn't turn back around to face her. She said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Who do you think I am? I am not as fragile as you think. I have committed enough sins that even 10,000 deaths wouldn't be enough to atone for them. You think I will brood just because of one person? Don't make me laugh." Kai Weiao smiled a little at Xianxia's reaction before turning her gaze back to her man. Then she let out a long sigh inside her mind. "Does it hurt? Good, it is what you deserve. Everything she did for you, everything she sacrificed to save you, it may hurt like 10,000 swords skewering your soul. But that is still preferable to never knowing the truth, isn't it?" Yunqi didn't know how much time had passed while he was experiencing the recollection of nothingness. It had been a long, real, and cruel dream. He didn't know how long he had suffered in the whirlpool of pain either. When his mind finally regained a bit of clarity, though, he said in a trembling but impossibly determined voice, "No." The voice had asked him if he wished to remove his memories of Xia Qingyu. This was his answer. "I thought you might say that." The woman's voice had been unfeeling this whole time, but now it was tinged with what felt like a small sigh. Yunqi adjusted his breathing and slowly opened his eyes. His eyeballs were covered in broken blood vessels. It almost looked like his eyes were drenched in blood. A bit more clarity entered his mind, and he continued in a horribly raspy voice. "You said you will tell me everything." Her interfered with fate, the reason she chose to end her own life. "Tell me, tell me." "As you wish," the woman assented. She didn't try to evade the question or delay the inevitable. The bright light bearing down on him disappeared once more, and his consciousness re-entered the infinite grayish world. When the woman spoke up again, it felt like her voice was growing increasingly distant and transient. A long time ago, the primal chaos was just a body of chaos. It took a long time before it gradually split into two different extremes, namely yin and yang. Yun-Chi. Another immeasurable amount of time passed, and the first ever living being was born at the center of the two bodies. It was the genesis of life in the primal chaos. All life that came after her knows her as the ancestral god. "Wait," Yun-Chi chose this moment to interrupt the voice. "I want to know what happened to King Yu, not the genesis of the primal chaos, and yet we must speak of it if I am to explain her existence and fate properly." The reply stunned Yun-Chi and threw his barely organized thoughts into disarray once more. King Yu's fate is tied to the genesis of the primal chaos. He had heard every word as clear as day, but they made zero sense whatsoever when strung together into a sentence. So he gathered his focus and silently waited for the voice to speak some more. As time passed, she who was later known as the ancestral god grew more and more self-aware and intelligent. She was the one who created language, profound energies, profound arts, and more. However, the more complete her consciousness became, the more she became filled with infinite loneliness. She was nurtured from the primal chaos. Both her power and her life were tied to the two extreme bodies of the primal chaos. As long as she continued to exist, the life force of primal chaos would all be concentrated on her person, and it would never be able to give birth to a second life. Finally, the ancestral god decided to eliminate her own existence and transform the primal chaos from a universe of one life into a universe of infinite lives. Therefore, she changed its structure and created functioning laws. When everything was ready, she eliminated herself and scattered her life force and power across all of the primal chaos. Before she was eliminated completely, she engraved part of her memories and power into 8 special life fragments. And so the primal chaos welcomed a whole new era, and countless lives were born all over the universe. The first of them had come from the 8 life fragments themselves. 4 life fragments landed at the north of the primal chaos and birthed the 4 devil emperors, and the other 4 landed at the south of the primal chaos and birthed the 4 creation gods. That was how the gods and devils first came to be. It marked the beginning of the era of the gods. These so-called ancient secrets weren't very secretive, to be honest. The god realm had detailed records of them, and Yun-Chi had heard them from the Golden Crow's soul when he was still in the lower realms. However, the voice's next words turned everything on its head. Although the ancestral god's life and power were gone, her consciousness hasn't faded with them. In fact, it was perfectly spread throughout the entire universe. Yun-Chi. It was because she wanted to witness the fruits of her labor with her own senses. She wanted to know what kind of world the place she had bestowed her life, her power and her laws upon would ultimately become. More time passed, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100 million years. Some races thrived in their environment and became stronger. Some did not and were wiped out. Some planets were created and turned into star regions, and some were destroyed for one reason or another. Guided by the laws she created, the universe itself spawned or refined many more laws and rules to better maintain and balance itself. Above the mortal realm, the higher lives who ruled over the 2 extreme bodies of yin and yang gradually came to reject one another. One of them was the god race, and the other was the devil race. The ancestral god was spread throughout the universe. She had witnessed every progress that was made during the era of the gods, every minor and major change that happened during this time. Before she knew it, an impossibly long time had passed since she had created this world. Even so, she didn't eliminate her own consciousness because she had become attached to the world she created. She wanted to continue watching and enjoying the myriad expressions of life. She wanted to bear witness to all of the unpredictable changes of time. One day, the fuse that would end the era of gods was ignited. Upon discovering the taboo union between the creation god of elements Nai-Xuan and the heaven-smiting devil emperor Jia-Yuan, the heaven-punishing divine emperor Mo-Yi decided to exile the heaven-smiting devil emperor from the primal chaos with the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. As a result, The relation between the god race and the devil race became utterly irreconcilable. Meiyin passed away much earlier than his expected lifespan due to excessive usage of the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. Not long after he passed away, the seeds of hatred that were buried since time immemorial finally bloomed in full force. Unlike all of the major or minor conflicts of the past, this war was an uncontrollable conflagration like nothing the primal chaos had ever seen. Godly powers erupted all across the primal chaos. Countless innocents were killed, and countless spaces were destroyed. More importantly, the aura and laws of the primal chaos were twisted or destroyed little by little. To the ancestral god, this great war was nothing more than an interesting experience. Whatever happened to this era, change, destruction, rebirth, it was all just the consequences of the choices made by the lives who lived it. Not only did she not lament the end, she even looked forward to the new era that would be born from this great war. However, at a certain point of time during the end of the war, she suddenly noticed an unnatural disturbance. The energy of the primordial universe, the spirit energy of the divine way, and the devilish aura of the dark amidst this turbulent space. They were all flooding in a certain direction. The abyss. It was only then she noticed that flaws and cracks had appeared on the laws she had bestowed upon the abyss. The abyss, Xianxia whispered unconsciously. The basis of existence is balance, the woman's voice explained. Where there is existence, there is extinction. The primal chaos you know is but one half of the original primal chaos. The half you exist in is called the world of existence. The other half you know not is called the world of extinction. The ancestral god named it the abyss. 1, T/N, there are 4 VOYURS now AAA.